This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. They'll never let the true facts come about more to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader? Don't remember the name. You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, yeah. Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 50. I am your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khalid.
And today, for our 50th episode, woohoo.
I was realizing before that, I was realizing before we didn't really attend our episode 50 with too much pomp and circumstance. We didn't plan anything very ceremonious, but I think that's fine,
That's okay.
Maybe for 100 we'll do a Jihadapalooza or something.
Big blowout, exactly.
Yeah.
A 25-hour Q&A.
Occultically significant numbers, 13. Maybe, I don't know.
Good point. 50 is just an even...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
50,
sure what...
it's half of 100. It's centenary. I don't know, hemi-centenary.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
anyway.
But I think the topic we're going to get into today is still kind of something that it's a nice little treat. Going back into the world of cinema and picking up on some things that I think we talked about in the Laurel Canyon episode as it relates to Hollywood in the 1970s. But I think unlike that episode where we ruthlessly slayed all of your favorite boomer idols and exposed them for the intelligence assets and satanic pedos that they are, I think we're probably, at least I'm not going to do that to the subject of today's episode because I am kind of standing a little bit. I'm kind of going into an Eagles mode with Brian De Palma.
Yeah, you were telling me that before, that you were getting into an Eagles point with De Palma, which I guess we'll explore as we continue.
I guess we'll find out who lied because somebody lied.
Right.
Just as Lebowski lied and Khrushchev lied and Miller lied and Tarantino lied. That hits almost closest to home because Brian De Palma, one of the greatest filmmakers of his day.
You were going on a pretty heated tirade about how he hasn't gotten the respect that he deserves compared to Scorsese and Spielberg and his peers in that sort of boomer filmmaker milieu.
Well, exactly. That's really the similar kind of Eagles flame of the kind of slightly contrarian I guess positioning that gets me excited sometimes because when you notice there's the kind of an asymmetry of praise for certain artists and then a slight maybe over symmetry of praise in other ones. And Brian De Palma, I think it's intriguing because he was such close friends with all of his peers in the new Hollywood in the 1970s, which were mainly Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, probably to some extent Michael Cimino, and even Robert De Niro, who I didn't realize this till I watched the documentary De Palma, that he started his like film acting career in Brian De Palma's student films at Sarah Lawrence. But like even that, Scorsese gets all the credit for like quote unquote discovering Bobby De Niro in Mean Streets. But like 4 years before that, he was in 2 De Palma movies where he played a draft dodger and not really like an Italian tough guy, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, like all of his peers, I mean, you could say like Francis Ford Coppola kind of peeled off, but now he's like a wine baron, and you know he still has like cachet, and his whole family's in Hollywood. George Lucas obviously is a billionaire who sold sold Star Wars to the white slavers at Disney. Steven Spielberg like has his own studio and is all over everything in Hollywood. And Scorsese is kind of like the resident film geek, like a prestige auteur, I guess you could say, who has like a $1 million movie deal with Netflix, etc. But then you look at Brian De Palma, somebody who is incredibly prolific and pumped out a lot of like very memorable films over about like a period of about 30 years, and he's being relegated to basically doing like straight to VOD like thrillers that are shot on like a cheap budget in Europe.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder perhaps why. And of course there's been a critical conversation. There are defenders of De Palma. I don't want to say that basically that like nobody appreciates him at all, but I do get the sense that like for some reason, especially in maybe his later career, we're going to talk about a film that was probably like his biggest failure and provoked like a huge backlash from various sectors of American society, which was his Iraq mockumentary Redacted.
Might have been thinking Mission to Mars, but
yeah, right.
No, that's not what we meant.
No, he admits that Mission to Mars was not good. One of his few kind of like full misses. I'd say to use a lame baseball metaphor, Brian De Palma was basically consistently like getting base hits and like occasional home runs and occasional grand slams for about a 30-year run, and only occasionally struck out. Unlike Friedkin, who was like really, once the 80s kind of got underway, it's like even if the aspects of the movie were interesting, they really didn't connect. A lot of them like flopped at the box office, and he doesn't even like half of them. And but with De Palma, he was able to keep it going. I mean, up through the mid 90s with like Mission Impossible, which I didn't really have a huge desire to go back and watch. So we didn't cover all of his films, but I think that would be impossible in one episode because this dude was so...
We're going to go into some of his, bit more marginal entries.
Some of his deep cuts.
We're not going to talk about Scarface. We're not going to talk about really. Mission Impossible.
We're not talking about Carrie.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about Carrie either, Yeah, but obviously he's made those very famous movies.
Yeah, we might refer in passing to some of them, but I would say if I'm just going through the list here of ones that I watched like in the past year, pretty much all of which I enjoyed to varying degrees. I watched, I guess, starting from the beginning, The Fury. Both of us watched that very recently from 1978. Yeah. I watched Blowout, Dress to Kill, Body Double, Raising Cain, Snake Eyes, Femme Fatale, The Black Dahlia, and Redacted. And watched a few of those in the past week, and there's just something it would feel like a heavier lift with most filmmakers to like mainline a bunch of their movies straight for a week, but I don't know, you can disagree if you'd like, but there's something so kind of like singular about his approach to filmmaking that is like so. I feel like he is one of those directors where if you put on his film, I would be able to guess with a pretty good certainty that it was a De Palma movie, even if I had like never heard of it, by the way the camera is moving, by the way the blocking and the scenes are set up, by that like split screen effect he loves using, and the presence of like scantily clad beautiful women in peril, etc. Like a weird kind of Aspie stalker artist character that is obviously a stand-in for De Palma. There are these things that like basically rhyme throughout.
One of the best anecdotes that he told in the documentary De Palma, which I watched in preparation for this episode, we both did, is that as a child, he came to suspect that his father was cheating on him. Or sorry, cheating on his family, I guess, cheating on his mother, he, like sort of staked out his office, which is across the street, and he saw this woman coming in and out, and one day he just like ran in there with a knife and like screamed like, "Where is she? Like, where is she?" and like found her like in the closet, and like that like sensibility like runs through like all of the De Palma protagonists.
Absolutely. And he re-dramatized that episode from his life into Dressed to Kill in 1980, where he had like a teenage character who is kind of like this computer whiz nerd, which is also relevant. We'll get to that. And he basically, a very similar thing. He starts to suspect that like his psychiatrist father is having an affair, and so he sets up like a surveillance like 16 millimeter camera that like is on a timer or something to like catch the video of them. And like surveillance, like voyeurism, snooping, spying, these are all things that are like really central to like all of his movies, and like he's kind of obsessed with like these things. I don't know if I would even call them subject matters, but it's like it's
themes.
Themes
motifs.
And like a pattern of experience, motifs. And of course he was like really influenced by Hitchcock. He claims kind of funnily in the movie, in the documentary,
like, I'm the only one who has like kept the legacy of Hitchcock alive. Everyone else is, everyone says he's so influential, but no one has really upheld his style except for me.
Which is a hot take, but also he's kind of not completely wrong about that. I'd say maybe he is the one like Hitchcock purist who has upheld those kind of like principles.
I could definitely see that his passion for Hitchcock exceeds that of others, and like certainly that whole like Rear Window type Hitchcockian sensibility, and he talks in that documentary with such enthusiasm about Vertigo, definitely I would agree that in terms of like the stylistic lineage, like it's definitely true. I guess like if you're self-consciously saying like I am going to be more Hitchcockian than anyone, then it's going to kind of fulfill itself. But
I mean he had other influences as well, and I guess we can just go through and maybe like talk about a little bit about like his life and some of his works. Like we will do a sus check to make sure that he's not some kind of a agent, but I don't know, what was just your first impression of like watching him like tell his own story in that documentary?
I thought that he as a person seemed more likable than Friedkin, maybe. Well, I don't know, I did kind of get like a creep vibe from him, like he's a bit of a creep in the same way that like his protagonists like are often sort of in that creep mold. Like that sort of heroic creep. But then again, maybe being creepy on the surface is better than being creepy surreptitiously, and like I don't know, like I'm thinking like maybe he's less creepy than Joss Whedon, whom is like a self-styled woke bae or whatever, maybe like I would take De Palma over that. I mean, that's my impression of him as a person. I think that Friedkin is I prefer Friedkin, I think, a little bit. Like I liked Phantom of the Paradise. Again, I'm not like that same level of De Palma connoisseur, but I do think that and I don't think that you were necessarily comparing him with William Friedkin in terms of saying that, because I don't think Friedkin really is someone who's held up as like in this pantheon of boomer filmmakers either, but
he's fallen by the wayside as well. I mean, maybe I respond more to Friedkin's sort of intellectual bent and his interest in maybe his thematic interests in like religion and in fate, whereas maybe you resonate more with De Palma's interests in like surveillance and like spying, paranoia. I think like the psychological experience of paranoia, and the like the complexity. I think we will get in like some of his movies, but something that jumped out at me is he mentions a few times in the documentary, he brings up the Zapruder film. And he definitely brings it up from the perspective of a kind of person that believes that there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination.
Yeah, well, I really liked his description of like his inspiration for the movie Blow Up, which is very good, or Blowout, that is. And not to be confused with the other movie Blow Up.
Antonio O'Neill.
The Blowout with John Travolta. His description of his inspiration for that was that he wanted to discuss or explore the idea that if it could be proven that, you know, there was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK, if the Zapruder film like did show that, no one would care, or it wouldn't make a difference, you know, which I think is a very interesting kernel of an idea. And I think that whole thing of like the assimilation of like resistance, or the idea that somehow these the proof, or the smoking gun, or the thing that is supposed to subvert the sort of evil plan being in some way assimilated to that plan or to that agenda, or the sort of twist where it's not what you would expect would send the whole edifice crumbling, is actually like made in some way, incorporated as part of that edifice. I feel like it's a recurring theme, you know, even in Phantom of the Paradise, you know, which is
it's incredibly big in Phantom of the Paradise,
really, even though honestly, it's very different from Blowout. It's still very much.
I almost wish that McGowan had gone into the content of Phantom of the Paradise a little bit more, because I feel like you don't want to just dismiss it as a kind of movie that is like I don't know, a kind of sick movie that's like laughing about how like evil the music industry is. I mean, I think it's like an absurdist, it's almost like this bizarre like Brechtian satire of the American music industry, like in the 1970s. And with a kind of like old like monster movie horror kind of elements to it, and also these like kind of really strong like musical montages.
Kind of,
like these.
And the
really,
music is interesting. The parodies of like genres
Laurel
that were prevalent
Canyon.
at the time. Exactly, of Laurel Canyon music. It's that the Laurel Canyon scene really is kind of what's being sent up in Phantom of the Paradise, among other things. Like
there's a great
it's like
montage
a pastiche of the Phantom of the Opera, but that's kind of the skeleton of the plot. But like definitely the target of the satire in that movie can best be summed up by saying that it's the Laurel Canyon scene.
Like a great sequence where the Beach Bums are playing a song called Carburetor, where it's like,
that's so
carburetors
funny.
are the meaning of life, like
like upholstery,
and it's like, you know, also you see the dynamic in that sequence, which ends with like a terrorist bombing from the Phantom, who's like a disfigured composer who's being like locked in the fucking theater by like a Phil Spector like maniac named Swan,
played by Paul
like,
Williams, who that was the big thing that Big Al and
that's Paul Williams.
Paul Williams. Paul Williams really was like a Laurel Canyon figure. The connection to Paul Rothschild that was sort of created like Paul Rothschild was a demonic record producer. He was in the military unit with the guy who wrote the paperback novelization of Phantom of the Paradise.
Gotcha.
The story is originally a De Palma story, which sets it apart from The Fury, which I didn't really like as much, I think because as De Palma kind of said in the documentary, like his heart wasn't like as in it as much.
He said it was like, he thought he did a good job and it was okay, but like it wasn't like a passion project of his. And that's another thing, like De Palma really doesn't get any credit for like being a screenwriter. Like I feel it's weird. Like he had the constant attacks throughout his career for being like aesthetically vapid. And like he's just all about style. There's no substance. I think people have said commonly like there's no real like recognizable De Palma kind of auteurish sense. Like it's just all tricks and like as if he's like Michael Bay or something. Anyways, that trick. But I feel like there's a real vision going on. Like definitely you see it in Phantom of the Paradise, and like it is one of the more like very cynical takes on the entertainment industry. I mean that first scene where the composer goes to the mansion of Swan, and there's like a line of women out of the like basically almost out the mansion up the stairs, and they're all going into like audition to basically sing his songs which have been stolen from him. And that one moment where it's like the one girl he's talking to and kind of develops a little crush on, he even has that very meta line of like like, are you just being nice to me because you want something? And he's like, I would never let like personal feelings corrupt my aesthetic judgment or something like that. I would never let my personal desires, like very making fun of himself there. But then it's her turn to go up, and she gets like dragged into like this like terrifying like zoom in shot of like this room where like I love that like Swan has Hell's Angels.
there's a cross-dressing theme, definitely in De Palma's films as well. Maybe between this and his more much.
He is very interested. Yes, Dressed to Kill and Raising Cain both have one has Michael Caine in drag and one has John Lithgow in drag. And that scene, the hero or like sort of the the focus character, Winslow Leach. Has to sort of who has his cantata of Faust stolen. His naivety is exploited by sort of the thug or underling of Swan, this record producer. The sleazy manager, the Herb Cohen, basically.
Just sort of dupes him and says like, in a month we're gonna do your first album, but he never hears back from them, and they just steal his music and they're gonna do it themselves to open the paradise, which is Swan's big. And that there's the symbology of the movie. There's many things about it that I think like really if you watch it carefully with like a critical eye or look expecting something from it in terms of like a more than just like a schlocky joke movie or a send up. There's definitely like another thing in terms of the beach bums and the sort of Laurel Canyon elements. It's interesting how they go through like multiple incarnations throughout the movie. Like they change musical styles. Like that's a whole theme.
Isn't that the meme that like basically the Juicy Fruits in the opening scene just keep transforming into a different band throughout the movie?
The Juicy Fruits, right? And then they become the Beach Bums. Right,
and then like nostalgia's over, so then they like have to move on to something, and then they get Beef, who's like a very like Alice Cooper.
Or Bowie or something. I don't know like what he was.
It was something like that.
I feel like he maybe was Alice Cooper because he was American, but he was odd. Yeah, that's there. That
was his interesting choice where he kind of revealed himself to be like a very fey, like gay man, and like I thought that he was like genuinely like an untalented meathead who there's a great scene where he's like sitting in like his space age desk and the lights go up on these different groups all around him that are like playing different styles. There's like a Laurel Canyon like hippie band, and then there's like a Motown Girls, and he's like, no, pretty, but no. And then he gets like this crappy guy who's like banging on a guitar, and he's like, we could do something with him.
That's actually one of my favorite lines, because like he says that's something he'll like, or so I think, which takes on like more meaning later in the film, because at first you're like, who's he? Like, who are you talking about? That's like an I'll follow him kind of like oblique thing, where it's like, because he's not talking about your first thought might be he's talking about Winslow, the Phantom, who at that point, we're not doing a very good job of explaining the plot of the film, but like, at that point he's kind of like, we should really talk about the plot of the film, but
I mean, we could say like we mentioned it a little bit, but basically the basic setup is, you're right, it kind of riffs off Phantom of the Opera, but it takes place in I think New York in the 70s, and this like very kind of like nerdy obsessive composer plays at like a kind of like this audition thing, like this like very creepy.
What's the thing? What is the deal with the first? I mean, it's hilarious, but that first song that the Juicy Fruit sing in the movie is about like some guy who committed suicide. It's like really funny. It's like,
and he's doing like West Side Story, like kind of Puerto Rican like minstrelsy, and like they're like a doo-wop like Grease group, and it's very very impressive like performance, but like bizarre. And because they're like a 50s
so like, they're
throwback
like, Eugene,
group.
like, what you did, like, we'll never forget you, like some weird song about like some guy
then he
killing
commits
himself.
seppuku with like a switchblade.
I have no idea who Eugene is even supposed to be. But anyway, I don't know if it was established.
But anyways, that's just the opening scene. But this composer, this like nerdy composer, who's very almost like like a James Taylor, like, but like weirder and like nerdier, but like
like
not really photogenic
kind of,
Yes, absolutely De Palma surrogate. And the first part of the movie is like very like slapstick. I mean, it all kind of is, but he plays this like song, and there's the sleazy manager guy and Swan are like watching, and he's like, get me that song, and but basically
he's like not really seen, he's all in the shadows,
and also I don't know if you noticed this, but in the very first shot there's a great like one shot take where the sleazy manager is talking to the camera and he's complaining about the girl singing on stage, and he's like, I got her whole career, I got her hooked up at this and that, and now she wants to go off and blah blah blah. And then he's like talking, you realize he's talking to Swan, and he says something like, you know, like, I want you to break her. And he's like, in due time. And then you see his hands, and he's wearing fucking like mason gloves.
Yeah, he
you
says
that?
like, there's
a few times he's like projected to be a mason.
The symbology of the movie is very interesting, actually. Like that's a whole other thing. Like I feel like but we can talk about that like as it comes out, I guess. But yeah, like he says something very interesting in that scene actually, where he says like, you know, I think he says like she's dead or something. Like, you know, she's already over. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, she's got everything. Like, you know, she's a star. Which is like, no, like, you know, she, like, in before you know it, like, she'll be done.
Like, for now.
Yeah.
But it's already been decided. This guy just basically plays like Kingmaker. And honestly, this is another interesting example of a movie with like the way De Palma gets talked about, maybe in terms of like Me Too, kind of like things like that, where, you know, on the one hand, does De Palma ogle and objectify like his attractive female characters and show a lot of nudity and like definitely embody and almost like revel in the male gaze? Yes. However, like he also shows like, I mean, if you want a kind of a depiction of like 1970s, like, you know, Me Too kind of like Hollywood culture, this movie kind of serves it up pretty raw. And you see like constantly like the casting couch stuff, like the abusive, like manipulative attitudes of like the managers and the handlers and Swan, who basically just has like, I think what you're getting to is like when Leach, isn't that his name, right? Leach, Winslow Leach. Yeah, when he goes to the mansion and there's that line of people, and then the girl goes in for her audition, and like immediately you see through like kind of the swinging double doors, like Swan like immediately leap on her, and there's all these like Hell's Angels bodyguards. By the way, the record label is also called Death Records, which is like
it was originally called actually Swan Song, like, you know, kind of a pun on the name of the character, but that actually was the real company that like or the real record label that released Led Zeppelin's albums.
You're right. That's right.
So they got like slapped with a lawsuit. So they changed to Death Records, which is, you know, really good. I like how he is like, okay, well, we'll just drop the euphemism. You know, we'll just drop the metaphor of the swan song.
And the fact that everyone's just like cheering, like, Death Records, and it's like it's so he is so obviously evil. Like it's just like, come on, like this guy, but yet he has all the power, and he has like literally he has like a rotating bed where he just like dresses these girls up who are like auditioning for him by basically having like a lesbian orgy that he joins in on.
Yeah, he basically makes them have a lesbian orgy. Yeah, like, I just wanted to say, like, I looked up the lyrics. It's actually not Eugene, it's Eddie, but this first song that Juicy Fruit sing kind of opened the movie. Like, you might not even catch this, like, even if you're watching the film, because, like, you know, you might be just, like, struck by, like, the hilarity of the performance. Like, the story of the song is actually, like, about, you know, you'll probably remember it if I say it like, you know, we'll remember you forever, Eddie. Through the sacrifice you made, we can't believe the price you paid for love. Yeah. Like, the whole song is about a guy who, like, you know, his sister needed an operation. Yeah. So he killed himself so that he could have like a hit album, like as a post-mortem star.
Yes.
To pay for her operation.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
it's I mean, the idea of like the sacrificed pop star who then becomes like a legend lives forever, and like that is served right at the beginning in the form of this like goofy like doo-wop throwback, you know, medley,
it's kind
basically.
of like it reminds one of the song American Pie mentioned in Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon.
No, it absolutely does. The whole nostalgia wave of like, and then that band like morphing into the Beach Bums, and then morphing into like Beef's like backing band. You know, when he opens up the coffin. They have like Kiss style makeup at that point, like that's probably Kiss too is like, and I think it seems like De Palma definitely has like the greatest amount of contempt. He has kind of contempt for like all of this like nostalgia wave, but like particularly for that like rock and roll, like bleh, like, you know, I mean, basically there's a really bizarre scene when like Beef makes his debut later in the movie, and not to jump around continuously again, but whatever, like go watch it. It's good. Like, so Beef is like, there's a series of singers basically that Swan uses like to sing the cantata and the music of like of Leech. And like they get increasingly kind of more ridiculous, and like the one he rolls out is like this like weird guy who he calls Beef, who's like a shocking like bleh, like Alice Cooper kind of like hard rock like screecher, and like it's pretty much like the worst rendition of like Winslow's music possible. Is like this whole there's a singer who has like a beautiful voice who's very much like a Linda Ronstadt, basically just like a talented girl who's like not down with like the casting couch shit, and like takes her work seriously. And it's like in a natural world, it's like maybe the exoteric narrative of like this 1970s music scene is that like that Leech and her would like join together and form this like beautiful kind of collaborative creative partnership, and she would sing his songs, and then like they would both be successful. But De Palma's pretty like firm that like nah, that's not how it works. Like instead this psychotic maniac is gonna just like ruthlessly exploit all of it. He basically he gets like there's a really funny like MK part in the beginning. So basically like once Leech like figures out that his music's been stolen, he tries to I forget what does he do to get arrested.
He goes immediately to the arrested. Manor. Yeah, and then when Swan finds him amidst like he infiltrates by cross-dressing the lesbian orgy that Swan has like arranged for his pleasure. Mm-hmm. And then Swan's first line, not his first line because we have that scene of him off camera kind of talking about the demise of this person to Philbin, but he
get this fag out of here.
F slur out of here. Yeah, exactly. Which is and it has that like sort of tension that like runs as you said, like Beefcake kind of has this like very queer. The whole thing is like very campy. And I think that that's something that's true of many of De Palma's films. They have this kind of like gay or queer.
I will say this.
Energy.
I will say this thought popped into my head real quick. Watching, I think that the other night is like De Palma is proof that like straight men too can do camp. Like it's like maybe only
assuming
him.
That he
He's like,
is in fact like not queer in some way. Like do we know for
that's
sure?
True.
I mean, he does definitely have a certain like voyeuristic obsessive gaze towards women. So
he's definitely attracted to women. I don't know if he's also what else is going on there. I think anyway there's something
interesting how like the first thing that this guy, I mean, Paul Williams himself has a very distinctive look, and like he has that kind of lisp and a very flamboyant manner, and he kind of reads at least as like kind of queer in some way. So there's a great irony to like his first line being this like homophobic thing, and I think that sort of tension of like the kind of like masculinity of the non-masculinity or whatever, the sort of the inversion runs through that like sort of anxiety, almost that like weird Freudian thing where like there's this terror or something that comes
it's an
from
interesting
the subversion of the masculinity or the absence of like genuine masculinity.
It's an interesting contrast that basically Swan is kind of affecting this very kind of a queer adjacent kind of a sophisticated fae. Like fuddy fae kind of thing. I mean, then but he's like ferociously straight and is in fact like kind of like a serial predator of like women. But then Beef, the other character, is playing this hyper masculine like tough guy macho like maniac rock singer, but he's like a very fae gay man who's just like playing a part. And so it's like they're doing this opposite kind of thing going on. Everyone's kind of doing the opposite of like what it seems they're presenting themselves at. But
as you mentioned, like this is really like a key like crux part of the film is what happens after that, because after he says I get this F slur out of here, he's like thrown into the street like kind of beaten up. And then like two black cops, kind of in a little bit of an inversion here, black cops plant like smack on him. And then, there's like a quick sort of montage of him trying to plead before the judge, that actually Swan stole his music, and the judge is like, you're a liar. He gets thrown into, Sing Sing in kind of a play on words. And there's like an experimental program that, like he becomes
sponsored by the Swan Foundation, which is like like that was when the movie got like completely Pynchon-esque for me. I realized like this is kind of like Inherent Vice or like something like that. Like this is like a Pynchonian kind of view on like the world of like that New York LA world at the time, and it even has like this weird MK moment in it where they're like, we're going to replace all of your teeth, right?
Yeah, with like silver, or like
grills.
Grills. Yeah,
it's like what happened to like Lil Uzi Vert, probably.
And then this, and ever from the very beginning of the movie, when Winslow Leach at the very beginning, when Philbin first suggests that the Juicy Fruits might sing his cantata, he has this outburst of anger. So he has an anger problem from the very beginning. And while he's working kind of on like the assembly line and the chain gang in this prison after his grill operation, he
wearing
hears,
a Swan Foundation hat, looking like very MK'd.
He sees like or hears something about how he's going to open the paradise with this thing that he's not credited for, and he
the
just
radio.
freaks. He freaks out and just does a jailbreak. And this is like his transformation into the Phantom, where he breaks into like a record press. I actually read that like the record press that the actor had to put his head into like did actually like kind of squeeze him, and he almost like was injured in it. But he in the process of trying to infiltrate and like disrupt the manufacture of
steal the
these
masters
records.
Or something.
He falls into the record press. And it like burns the side of his face and mutilates him, like the Phantom of the Opera. So that is like his and
then he's presumed dead, and there's like a very creepy article, kind of like the Eyes Wide Shut article they find about like the model who like got sacrificed, and like, oh, she just had a drug overdose, and it said like like zany like junkie songwriter like meets grisly end by falling into the East River, and just kind of like goes over like, oh, like all the typical language you would hear from one of these like spooky kind of stories of like a fallen entertainment industry figure who died, but of course he doesn't die. And then
the very interesting thing about he takes on basically the persona of this Phantom, and like he wearing this very theatrical outfit of like including like a cape and everything, and but the key aspect is this the key aspect is this mask that he has, which is an owl mask basically. It's a chrome sort of motorcycle helmet almost style, but it
almost
has
like
MF
clear... Doom almost, but like also like a bird, more like bird shaped.
It has like a beak. It looks like an owl. It's an owl motif really, which is because there's a lot of like there really is bird symbology through the entire movie.
Death Record symbol is like a bird like with its feet
dead
sticking
bird,
out dead.
Swan, Phoenix is the name of the
girl
character. That he wants to sing his music. The one who can sing his music. I mean, swans obviously are symbolically significant, like esoteric.
Leda and the Swan.
Right, of course. That's one
rapist.
Of the more famous stories. Zeus is the swan, or the sort of solar divinities as swans. Sometimes you see in the sort of earlier mythologies, but they're definitely the black swan, of our modern day paranoid myth themes, but. That's a very interesting aspect, like subtle aspect of the movie. Is this the symbolism of the sort of avian esoteric symbolism, especially the owl, I think. And this mask is very very iconic, very very distinctive.
And so like one of the things that happens, which also I think is like a very big it contains a lot of commentary on like the culture of the music industry, is like Swan like sneaks back up. He also, by the way, just gonna mention, one of the many times like something De Palma did first ended up being iconically associated with somebody who did it later. There's like a great like POV shot when he returns from like being disfigured and like wanders into the paradise where like the biker gang that protects Swan like sees him and are like, and like you basically are like walking in just like the opening scene of Halloween with Michael Myers, that iconic thing, except he didn't have a Steadicam yet because they didn't exist. But basically, like the kind of the opening scene of Halloween is like an entire sequence in, I don't know if somebody else did a POV kind of thing, like maybe Hitchcock did it. Maybe Psycho. There is also like an almost exact kind of ode to Psycho.
Homage to Psycho.
But anyways, like he goes, I think, to try to like kill Swan, and Swan offers him, and Swan's like kind of expecting him, and is like, I can build you back up, and offers him this like medieval looking contract that he has to sign with blood.
The contract actually is like a recreation from like the silent film of Faust, because his cantata is an adaptation of Faust. And I think that that was one of the things that they got sued for, is that they originally used like footage from a bunch of old movies, including the Universal Phantom of the Opera movie.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that actually, it's a recreation of the contract from Faust, or in that sort of style. Yeah,
very ooky spooky. And so he signs him to a contract and then builds like a secret like cave studio filled with like cutting edge recording equipment and puts this like voice box on him. Another thing that I don't know if this jumped out at you, but the similarity between the Phantom and Darth Vader. Exactly.
Yeah, right. Did jump out at me very much.
Because he basically, his voice is like messed up for some reason.
Yeah,
and he wears this like vocal box around his neck.
Yeah, well, Swan gives him like a voice box basically that brings his voice back. So it's very much like Darth Vader. I mean,
he's like, more machine than man.
I mean, it's like it's a lot like Darth Vader really in the prequels even, because I don't even know like how when the original Star Wars how well developed that idea was. That I guess it wasn't, but that it wasn't his real voice or something. But he has this sort of metallic voice where he just like says like Phoenix, it's like
But there's a great montage where like he's like hooked up to all these like wires and tubes in this like recording studio, playing one of his like soulful cantata songs, but like is like and then like and Swan is in the control room like turning knobs and stuff and getting it so like by the very end it's like back to like his perfect original voice, and it sounds great. But it just it's a really heavy scene of just like the machines like being able to take over and basically create this sound, and like the corruption of the real, and taking this artist's work and all that kind, which I think De Palma sees himself in this character. There's another great moment where he comes in with like a suitcase and opens it up, and it's just full of all these drugs, and he's like, "Time for breakfast." Gives him, like, a bunch of drugs,
He's just,
and
like,
so
existing on drugs.
So I think that's really there's a lot in this movie that and then of course the big twist at the end, De Palma doesn't shy away from it. This guy is under contract himself with the devil.
Right. Yes. Because that's one of the things where he says that's something he'll like. Obviously, like the Phantom isn't gonna like it, because the Phantom's whole thing is that only Phoenix can sing his music. It's much like a Phantom Christine Daae type thing, where it's all about Phoenix, and like he's gonna be outraged if anyone could sing except for Phoenix. So the idea that he'll like beef, so we don't know who he is. But then later, after basically the Phantom, so that all goes through. Swan has the beef like perform this song, and the Phantom breaks, and he walls the Phantom in like he like bricks him in, like he murders him into
kill
the
him.
cell.
Very Edgar Allan Poe.
Exactly. Very like Cask of Amontillado or whatever. I hope.
And then there's of course a great scene where like then Swan like seduces Phoenix and is like, "You're going to be our new star." And he takes her back to the mansion, and then of course he watches through like the ceiling window as like they have sex. Yeah. And of course it's like classic De Palma.
Before that, Beef goes out on stage and he like electrocutes him in like a horrifying fashion, and then they sort of usher Phoenix out. Like Philbin, I think, pushes her out because he's like, more people were gonna die unless you sing. He killed Beef so that you could sing. And then she wins over the crowd and she becomes a star, and she's immediately, she's of course a sort of ingenue character, but she's immediately caught up in the fame, and like she feels like so grateful towards Swan, and she just is like, I'll do anything, you've given me all this fame, and he's like, I like your name, like we won't have to change it, like
of course, you sicko, Phoenix. Ugh.
The Phantom tries to like plead with her, but like she won't listen to him, and she doesn't like quite recognize him, and so then she goes back with him, and like he has to watch like the skylight while they have sex, and then like this is a great like twist line, or it's very kind of, it's not really so much a twist in a way because you almost sort of know, but the Phantom like confronts Swan and like stabs him.
Well, he tries to kill himself first, and then Swan shows up and says like, "Hey, like you can't get out of my contract."
Right? Yeah, he said like, "I own." The contract basically gives him like complete control. It's almost a comedic scene where like Winslow is so naive, and the contract is basically signing his soul away and like in perpetuity, and Swan's like, "Well, that's to protect you," and stuff like that. Like stupid little like bromides, but so he tries to like cut himself open, and then when he sees Swan, he tries to stab him, and or Swan says, yeah, like, you can't kill yourself, like, and if you try to kill me, that gaping wound will open again. But the Phantom doesn't care, just to stab him. And he has that great line where he says, like, I'm under contract too. Yeah. And because the wounds, won't hurt him. And eventually, the Phantom discovers, like, a tape. Which this is another thing we kind of mentioned. I think it was in our first Giants episode. We didn't really get into this in the Spirit Photography episode. But this is kind of a pastiche of the picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Which I think is related to, for those who have heard the Spirit Photography episode, this sort of craze in the 19th century, that story, the idea of the picture that ages while the person doesn't, the sort of talismanic power of images and image magic that, was very much in the zeitgeist at that time. This recurs in this movie, except it's a videotape.
And it's him. And it's like a reflection in a mirror of him allegedly in a hot tub, allegedly as a young man.
Speaks to him, and basically says, like, I'm the devil, and you'll look like me forever, like, and only this tape will age or something. Although it doesn't seem to have actually happened, but he has to watch it continually. That's what he has to do, which is again kind of this sort of like blowout type, like obsessive, paranoid, like a rewatching compulsion theme that you see again, like that's what sort of the thing is, that he must rewatch it endlessly, but if it's ever destroyed, he'll become vulnerable again.
He'll revert to his true form, basically.
Right. Yes.
He'll turn into the picture of Dorian Gray.
Right, yeah, he'll become like this disfigured monstrosity, and because originally he's just gonna kill himself because he's literally gonna slit his wrists because he's gonna get old. The idea that he'll like ever
even that idea, and who would have the resources to like film yourself in your bathtub in like 1952, which I feel like is what it said. It was like in the 50s when he allegedly made this like video. So it's like he must have already been kind of rich or come from a rich family or like had a lot of resources. Like, what was this guy kind of involved with? Like, he's so deeply like sinister and seems to be like connected to something. It doesn't seem to imply that he kind of came out of the blue. Like, he was an absolute nobody. It's just that he was so pissed off that he was going to get older that he just wanted to die. And so the devil offered him an opportunity to stay young forever and like conquer the music industry.
Yeah. And,
but I mean, De Palma, he comes down hard on like music industry explicitly controlled by Satan.
Yeah, and it's a very, actually, despite the movie being like this kind of like Charles Bushy, like campy tone, like having this Charles Bushy campy tone, like it's very chilling to see the like degeneration of the ingenue Phoenix, like under Swan's care, because he like drugs her up. The Phantom is horrified to discover, like, while spying on them, of course, like your standard De Palma protagonist, he finds that, like, she's being asked to sign like a marriage contract, basically, that's a similar sort of soul contract, and she's like,
all drugged
at
up
that point,
on, like
totally loopy, and she's like, like F H, like, trying to like spell her own name, like, right, it's that's a very, very chilling scene, but he does succeed in destroying this tape, and that the Phantom, or not the Phantom, Swan tries to go through with like their wedding as part of like this stolen opera of Faust. He's like incorporating.
It is so satanic. It's like extinction level event 2 in terms of like he has what's his name, the manager, basically dress up as like a bishop. So it's like this weird, like, satanic inversion of, like, a Catholic mass, but it's a concert at the Paradise. Yeah. And it's going to be this whole thing, which then is foiled. And his plan is, like, well, his plan is even worse than that, because it's not, well, he does want to have this sort of wedding, but his real plan is to literally have her shot, like, from afar in, like, a Kennedy assassination type fashion. Like, in a, and he literally says, like, in a very, like, sort of, a clear, to my mind, reference where he says, like, an assassination, coast to coast TV, like, that's entertainment, Yep, he did say that. He did say that. Yeah, he's just assassinating celebrities for fun. This guy.
Yeah,
I mean, he got one. Once you get one taste of it,
right? Yes,
he's out of control.
This is going to be the biggest thing at the paradise, ultimately it ends up being the Phantom sort of jumps the gunman and ends up shooting the Philbin, who's dresses the priest.
Philbin, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, make sure you shoot her as soon as she says "till death do us part" or something like that.
It's such a sicko.
Another thing is another extinction level event aspect of it is that because I think at that point the Phantom has destroyed the magical tape.
Yeah.
He has become like this disfigured monster. Swan has, another disfigured monster, and he has to wear a mask too. So everyone is like in this masquerade, thing.
Trying to reveal their true horrific nature. And then doesn't he like stab him to death with like a beak mask or something?
He like jumps him and pummels him to death.
And then his wound opens up, and he slowly
and then he
kind of
dies.
dies.
And then Phoenix realizes like that he was like a kindly man all along, or whatever, and like it's like, oh, it's Winslow.
Pretty. And that, of course, all of this is done in like a huge ballroom scene with like a bunch of different moving parts and simultaneous action and like hundreds of extras, and during like a huge musical number.
Yeah, the Phantom is like carried away I think after Swan is killed, he's like carried away like crowd surf style. They're both.
That's right.
Away,
Very. I mean, he De Palma. He maybe doesn't get as heavy-handedly religious as maybe a Scorsese or a Friedkin, but he's got those elements in there.
Yeah, definitely in this film for sure.
The dark priest aspect.
Yeah, I was impressed actually where he discussed like his idea for like the alternate ending to Snake Eyes, where there was like divine intervention.
Oh,
like
yeah.
A tsunami came and like swept everything away at the end. Like
that would have been amazing.
By that. And, it's disappointing that they didn't.
It's the only thing. It's the only thing that could resolve this fucked up world. An act of God.
Yeah, exactly. We're dealing with so much corruption that the only thing that could solve it is if God comes down. And just
almost like another 9/11 predictive programming without realizing it. It's like he was feeling these vibes. We'll talk about Snake Eyes in a little bit. Another one I watched a few months ago, which I really love and has very like JFK elements to it.
When a young singer dies, to our shock and surprise, in a plane crash or a flashy sports car, he becomes quite well known, and the kindness he's shown has made more than one post-mortem star. Well, you did it, Eddie. And though it's hard to applaud suicide, you gave all you could give so your sister could live. All America's choked up inside, man. We'll remember you forever, Eddie, through the sacrifice you made. We can't believe the price you paid for
Before we dive deeper in his filmography, I think maybe it'd be good to like rewind a little bit and talk about like where did Brian De Palma come from, and I guess like what influenced him to utilize the styles that he did, and all that stuff. Because I think there's some interesting things going on in it that are both obvious and in some cases less obvious. But I think it's also worth pointing out De Palma was born on September 11th, 1940. So I don't know. Maybe his 9/11 experience is a little different than other people's because it was his birthday.
Yeah, it was his birthday. Damn. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't think about it that way. I was thinking more like the Crowleyan alignment or whatever. But the escapade angle. But yeah, it must have been pretty brutal on 9/11 to be celebrating your birthday. And then.
Yeah, your 71st
and then for the rest of your life, your birthday's 9/11.
Yeah, that's how it's been for him.
I guess by that point in your life, it was born in 1940, you said?
Yeah.
Then
so he's
by that point,
kind of like Joe Biden, not technically even a boomer. He's like a proto-boomer.
Wow.
Silent generation, which a lot of the big people in the 70s kind of were.
Well, maybe that's why he's so little known, because he's of the silent generation. He's not.
I guess so.
Yeah, something interesting about his early oeuvre, his back catalog, is that he did a film of Dionysus in '69.
Yeah. I do want to talk about that real quick, but just to lead up to he was already making films by that point. It's kind of his early project. I just want to say that how he ended up doing film in the first place real quick. His dad was an orthopedic surgeon who was the son of Italian immigrants, Anthony De Palma. And I guess he grew up in Philadelphia, probably an upper middle class background. Anyways, he eventually went, much like Thomas Pynchon, he ended up going to Columbia University and he studied physics. And I guess in high school, he started building computers. And he won a regional science fair prize in high school for a project called An Analog Computer to Solve Differential Equations. And that was kind of his background. It was a very technical, scientific kind of background. But then he started to get seduced by movies while he was in college. So then in 1962, he kind of pivoted away from his science studies and started getting an MA in film I believe in the theater department at Sarah Lawrence College. So I feel like that's important to note, worth mentioning, because I think it immediately makes a little more sense why he would end up doing Dionysus in '69, is that he was hanging out in the Sarah Lawrence crowd. And I guess for those who don't know, he was also one of the first male students among a female population, which if you think about it, it really aligns a lot of stuff with De Palma's fascination with women and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was even a meme, if you went to college in the East Coast, in the Northeast, that there always was a meme that, there were basically no straight males.
Yeah, Sarah
that
Lawrence is still mostly women for sure.
Yeah, and I remember, this is something that would be said by dumb college kids, but if you were a straight guy at Sarah Lawrence, it was paradise, because there were men, but most of them were gay. And so if you were a straight man, you were the gender balance was incredibly skewed in one direction. And it seems when you meet a straight guy who went to Sarah Lawrence, and then you see De Palma, who did, I guess, fancy himself going back to high school as a bit of a ladies' man. It kind of is oh, okay, I see kind of what drew you there, of all places, a little bit. But at the same time, the other thing people know about Sarah Lawrence is that it's kind of an archetypal, lib, feminist, woke college, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also known for being I think for having a good arts program in theater and things like that. So it would make some sense.
Yeah,
close to New York City,
Yeah, and I guess they had some real heavy-hitting film drama teachers and filmmaking teachers as well there, which I believe included Wilfrid Leach, the Maysles brothers, like we said, Michelangelo Antonioni, Jean-Luc Godard, Andy Warhol, and Alfred Hitchcock. Those were all big influences on him. I think maybe all of them were visiting lecturers at some point at Sarah Lawrence.
I didn't make the connection between Wilfrid Leach and Winslow Leach until just now, but
yeah, neither did I. But then he started making films as a grad student at Sarah Lawrence, and the first one starred a young Robert De Niro. In The Wedding Party, and then Greetings and Hi Mom. And then I guess he eventually went back to New York and kind of hung out in the Greenwich Village filmmaking scene, and started he also, much like George Lucas, made a bunch of small documentary films for the NAACP and the Treasury Department, and also for IBM. One of his first shorts in 1961 was called 660124, The Story of an IBM Card. So we're getting strong, kind of like weird, like Pynchon kind of cybernetics, like, I don't know, doing George Lucas also did government documentaries in like around this time as well, and then ended up working for the Maysles brothers, who I guess taught Brian De Palma in New York, and then they became friends later on. So you see like a discrete level of people influencing all these people. And I guess he made like a MoMA documentary called The Responsive Eye. And then, sorry for that detour, in 1969, he kind of makes something that is kind of like an aesthetic breakthrough for him in some ways, and is also like a very 1969 New York avant-garde kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
It's like a pretty famous like performance, like theater history thing. Like the guy who directed this play, Dionysus 69, Richard Schechner, is like known as the father of like academic performance studies, which is like very like his collaboration with Victor Turner, who's an anthropologist. Like the whole idea of like rites of passage, like social drama, like a lot of what contemporary like people, I think especially in like the popular culture, like people outside of like the academic world, like think about in terms of like rituals and the the sort of transcultural power of rituals and the way they function in society and that type of stuff, comes out of the like Schechner-Turner collab, and the sort of anthropological ideas around performance that they generated, I think are pretty influential. Like they were kind of like a new version of like the Cambridge ritualists, who made a pretty big splash like in the early 20th century. Like with the whole like dying and being the dying god and the things like that, the year king and stuff. Victor Turner's like the rites of passage was like a big thing that he did. Really, one of our go-to words that we're often using, liminal, is like really a Victor Turner thing. Okay. He was the one who like really proposed and propounded the idea of liminality as a feature in like social ritual and that type of thing. And he was very close collaborator with the director of this play, Richard Schechner. And you can see with the sort of themes of the play, the undercurrent of their sort of those two people's mutual interests in this type of domain. So it's a very interesting thing to have filmed. This play basically is like kind of an adaptation of the Bacchae, the play by Euripides. That's pretty famous. People know it, I think, maybe, but it's sort of Dionysus versus Pentheus, and Pentheus trying to assert these kind of his control over the women is maybe often how it's read. I mean, there's multiple readings of it, of course, like an ancient Greek play. We can talk about it maybe some other time, like the Euripidean.
I have heard of it, but I'm not an expert by any means. But I mean, it is very much like a bacchanalia in terms of the racy kind of like wine orgy kind of content of it. The Euripides play definitely. I mean, the Bacchae, they are their revels are the archetypal bacchanalia. They're like these women who they are like kind of driven mad by their revels with Dionysus, and they become sort of uncontrollable and violent. People obviously have like certain feminist readings of the Bacchae, but I kind of like and you don't want to step on any or rain anybody's parade, but I think that a lot of these ancient Greek plays are like pretty misogynistic. I mean, lately people have kind of started to propose that, I think almost kind of like out of a sort of wishful thinking, that like there were women in the audience at these plays, but I actually don't necessarily think that they were allowed. It's my personal opinion, but I could be wrong. So it's like mostly for a male audience, but I digress a bit. That would be that would be relevant because this Dionysus in 69 kind of involved like breaking the fourth wall and a certain amount of interactivity with the audience, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is all about like Richard Schechner's idea of like environmental theater, you know, a very site-specific type of interactive theater that would be, you know, challenging, very, very, as you said, avant-garde, challenging traditional norms of, you know, this sort of spectator performer divide. Actually, you know, I have here Richard Schechner's book, Performance Theory, where he talks quite a bit about Dionysus in 69, and he talks about some of the things that happen, you know. He says, you know, he's comparing this to like ancient rituals and stuff. He says, William Finley, playing Dionysus in Dionysus in 69, had to start his performance each night by emerging naked amid an audience of 200 and saying, "Good evening, my name is William Finley, and I am a god." Only by finding, releasing, and showing his deepest impulses of fear, hilarity, fraud, and humiliation could he begin to cope with the actuality of his preposterous situation. Other, like, sort of notorious thing about this play is they used attack therapy, like, to sort of get the, you know, this is sort of in the... Yeah, I don't know if you know anything about Grotowski, but a lot of his stuff was all about kind of like exhausting actors to like their physical limits and
wow,
the actor. Yeah,
that is really intriguing because that shows up in Body Double. There's like a big scene there where the main character is being like basically screamed at and broken down and kind of put through the. You basically it looks like. You can't even tell. It looks like it could be an est session or an acting class, basically, like the way it plays out. And it's like very, it's coded by De Palma as like very psychologically abusive and kind of fucked up and like invasive. And and that also like ties in with all kinds of like encounter therapy and stuff like that was just floating around California in like the 60s and 70s. And yeah, like est and like Synanon and groups like that, and even I don't know, like quasi-Maoist communes and stuff that were set it up right around 69, 70, where it was like non-hierarchical leadership, but you had to do like struggle sessions, and then there's a lot of like fucked up dynamics, like, you know, or Lyndon LaRouche like trying to break down the little me and like destroy the, you know, subjectivity of the bourgeois worker, etc. You're starting to see, and it's actually, I'm looking here, like it is noted on attack therapy, a controversial group Synanon used a form of attack therapy. That was the Synanon confrontation game. And I guess verbal attack therapy, I guess in the Dictionary of American Penology, Williams, I guess this author, wrote that attack therapy was actually first developed in the Synanon group. And it was called simply the game within the group, described by a former participant as quote brutal and bordering upon sadism. Also, the Scared Straight, remember that? All those shows and stuff, that they were also compared this to basically attack therapy as well. So I guess that's a very vivid example for anybody who's maybe like wondering. But it's very inherently kind of coercive and culty. And so that was a part of basically the
sort of rehearsal process. Like you know, it was pretty brutal. Like you know, they would like rehearse for 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, you know, doing these intense things, including attack therapy. You know, this very intense. And you can like look at some of the I think, you know, you can use interviews, and you can also, you know, I think there might actually be some recordings of their rehearsals. At least, you know, obviously you can watch De Palma's movie of the actual play.
I went looking for it. It's hosted on some NYU website, but it's using some old kind of Flash browser that my computer no longer recognizes. So I've had trouble getting like a good segment of it to like watch. But the little bits of it that are in the documentary are very evocative. I mean, it's like all these kind of like writhing bodies, and of course it's like the first time that he really employs the use of his split screen technique, which is funny. I feel like it's one of those things that maybe later a lot of like critics have attacked him for just being like an empty stylistic trick, but he conceives of it, he repeatedly describes it as like a very cerebral, very intellectualized technique to like employ in his film. And actually he did have to like dial it back in movies like Carrie, where like in the climactic scene it was like all split screen initially, because he just wanted to show, you know, like the dichotomy between the two different things, or the interplay, or like the suspense building. It really is kind of, I don't know, it could be used dumbly in a lot of people's hands, but it's one of those things that really jumps out as like, that's a De Palma thing that he's repped really hard, and nobody else has really kind of gone on except maybe like the 24 TV show, you know, done it in like a tacky way. But I feel like he takes the use of that very seriously, and this is like the first appearance of it, right? Because he wanted to get the audience kind of reaction and the performer simultaneously.
Right, yeah, and this is like theater on the round, so it's very like immersive type of thing, you know. So having the different angles on it and not like having one focus of the action would be sort of very key to capture it. So yeah, he'd be showing the same moment of the production from, you know, different parts. So yeah, it would be a natural fit for trying to capture something like this. There's some other interesting kind of quotes from Schechner about this to kind of give a sense of it. Obviously, you know, there was the mentioning of the sort of nudity, the radical nudity there. In Dionysus in 69, there is a scene about halfway through that starts when Dionysus offers Pentheus any woman in this room. Pentheus says he can have his pick without Dionysus' help. Okay, says Dionysus, try it yourself. Pentheus is left alone in the center of the room. Almost every night, some woman comes to him and offers help. The scene plays privately between them and ends with the woman rejecting Pentheus, or the actor playing Pentheus, and going back to her place. The performance resumes, and Pentheus, defeated, is sacrificed. Once it did not happen this way. In the words of William Shepard, who played Pentheus, one time the sequence was completed was when Catherine Turner, not to be confused with Kathleen Turner, so I don't know who, just some person, came out into the room. The confrontation between us was irrational. Her concern for me was not based on the play, my playing a role, whether or not I was going to die or any of that. What happened was that I recognized in one moment at the emotional energy Catherine was spending on me literally lifted me out of the play as though someone had grabbed me by the hair and pulled me up to the ceiling. I looked around and saw the garage, which is their performance space, and the other actors, and I said, it finally happened. The play fell away like shackles being struck from my hands. The way the play is set up, Pentheus is trapped inside its structure. But on that night, it all seemed to fall away, and I walked out the door. Joan McIntosh is playing Dionysus that night. Her reactions were different. Bill got up and left the theater with the woman. I announced that the play was over. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight for the first time since the play has been running, Pentheus, a man, has won over Dionysus, the god. The play is over. Cheers and cries and celebrations. I felt betrayed. I was hurt and angry at Shepard. I learned something corny but true, that if you invest all of yourself in the work, the risks are very great. He says, on only one other occasion was the performance similarly torn from its rehearsed path. But many times people came to the play challenging performers participating in the death ritual where Pentheus is killed. Some of this participation was naive, but much of it came from people who had seen Dionysus in 69 more than once. In June in 1968, Shepard was kidnapped by 5 students from Queen's College who planned to stop the quote-unquote killing of Pentheus and spent the afternoon working out their strategy. Many of the performers felt that their play should not stop because Pentheus was not genuinely rescued. I agreed and asked for a substitute Pentheus from the audience. A young man of 17 volunteered. He did very well. He had seen the play 5 times and knew what was expected of him. So you can kind of see like what this was like. You know, it's something that would make people like it's very like intense, uncomfortable, like artistic milieu for like people like now. You know, for your average person, like would not want to be hanging out like among the like cast and crew of Dionysus 69. Like they would be like put off because of like their intensity, their actorliness, for lack of a better word. You
definitely know that there's a certain cultiness that can kind of like develop around either like a theater company or
anyone
a production.
Who's been around like theater people knows what I'm talking about.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
For any extended period of time, like knows what I'm talking about. Like, you know, people are uncomfortable around theater people in general. Like, so yeah, and this was intended to recreate that like culty emotional vibe of the play, you know, and they like would literally have these sort of like struggle sessions, as you said, like on stage as part of the production, you know. So yeah, a lot of volatile things being experimented with there in the artistic sphere that were in other spheres key to it is like the sort of the key to it is like playing with the sort of fourth wall aspect, you know, like Schechner writes in a very cliche thing for people who are into this material, but it says like McIntosh does not quote play Dionysus, neither quote are they the characters. During rehearsals, the performer searches his personal experience and associations, selects those elements which reveal him and also make an autonomous narrative and or action structure, strips away irrelevancies and cop-outs, hones what remains until everything is necessary and sufficient. What results is a double structure, not unlike that of the, hey, he's talking about comparing his dumb play to like someone's sacred ritual in the classic Schechner manner. But anyway, but first is the narrative and or action structure of Dionysus 69. The second is the vulnerability and openness of the performer. Each performance he risks freshly not only his dignity and craft, but his life in process. Decisions made and actions done during performance may change the performer's life. The performance is a set of exchanges between the performer and the action, and of course among all performers and between them and the audience. Theatrical reality is instantaneous, not an illustration of life, but something linked to life only by analogy. And that's a Grotowski quote, that last bit. Someone, who, as we said, was very into the sort of intense, preparation for performance and the intense sort of style of actor pedagogy and of theater in general. But
was he based in the U.S.?
Poor theater.
Grotowski?
He was based in the U.S. certain times. He was Polish.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely had their intense schools of acting as well. Anybody who's seen the Decalogue?
For sure. He's one of like, the biggest, most influential like theater directors probably of like the 20th century. So yeah, he definitely left his mark. But so this whole aspect of like the ritual theater, the poor theater, the holy theater.
The Holy Theater, and even kind of the Phantom of the Paradise, like taking place like really in even though it's like a concert venue, it feels like an opera house, or like an old theater.
Definitely, it does feel like it does definitely capture that sense of being like kind of like a concert film or a performance film. It does have that sort of verite vibe to it. And it also has that like panoramic feeling, like where the scenes of performance are filmed. You do get a very organic and well realized sense of the interplay between performer and audience. Mm-hmm. And even that scene you mentioned where Swan is kind of spinning around, to sort of see the different groups, the sort of different incarnations of the cantata, like the different musical styles, the sort of trying them out, moving through them. It still has that same kind of telescopic or sort of effects, the same kind of like a revolving theater in the round type feeling. So that's a very interesting, little appreciated aspect of De Palma's background. Like after making like greetings, or like whatever, that
well, even that it's like worth mentioning that those first few movies he did with Robert De Niro definitely had a political bent to them, and like he I guess even described by some as a left revolutionary bent to some of these let's see, a leftist revolutionary viewpoint. I don't know who said that, but basically also I guess he did state his intention around that time to become the American Godard, and I guess he was also he was really influenced by the movie Weekend by Godard, which I remember watching that in college, and like that is a wild movie, and it's like a psychedelic like Maoist satire. I don't even know what it is, like, but it's crazy, and it has some like amazing, really wild, like long tracking shots. Like I don't know if you remember ever seeing it. Weekend.
No, I haven't.
It involves like Maoist cannibal revolutionaries and like bourgeois marriage, and I think it came out in '69. Yeah, it's a Godard movie. It's like when he really starts going off on both like a more political and a like Brechtian like deconstructing genre direction, like going very meta. And pushing against those limits. But yeah, I mean, the other movies, I think Greetings is where Robert De Niro gets like a draft notice, and the whole movie is him going around with like his buddies in New York and like having hijinks, trying to come up with different ways to like basically get out of the draft. And I think that has like a number of monologues, like basically shit talking the Vietnam War. There's another, it might have been Hi Mom from that era, where there's like a monologue in there of a guy like holding up pictures of like Dealey Plaza and being like, you see there behind the grassy knoll, there's a guy with a 7.62 Russian rifle at the exact moment. And like in the documentary, De Palma commented like, yeah, like I can like insert like political things into my movies by having characters basically rant about them, like not really the main character.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting observation that like that actually is often more effective than like turning your like kind of main characters into a PSA. Like having, you know, having it kind of in the background. But like, I don't know. I think that it definitely indicated that he had, unlike so many of the Laurel Canyon set, he had a certain sense of like politics that was like generally leftist, even though I think that got kind of sublimated once you get more into the 70s and 80s and 90s. It did eventually kind of come back. And yeah, when we talk about Redacted, it got him in a lot of trouble, but it's interesting to see him come out of the gate kind of with something, at least in that 70s sense of like more power critical and a little more cynical about like the American culture and the American system and all of these things. And yeah, I mean, I guess like George Lucas was like, the rebels were the Viet Cong, you know, so I guess they all were kind of like flirting with a lot of these ideas in the 70s, but in a way they were all, their whole clique of people were at least like casually more left wing than any of the music people were. Which is kind of interesting, but not to say they were, you know, Eisenstein or anything, but
yeah, Greetings definitely is, you know, it's anti-war for sure. You know, so that's
but then, you know, he also, like in the 70s, I think a lot of these themes that he's kind of obsessed with, like kind of voyeurism and also sinister forces afoot, he starts to really link into like he fixes in on like ESP and telepathy in a couple projects that he does, and which one, of course, which like I don't think we'll really talk about, is like Carrie, obviously his big breakthrough hit. I feel like a lot of people have seen it. I saw it, you know, a while ago. I think I'd probably enjoy watching it again, but I feel like that's like well-trod territory. So instead, we watched the one that came after Carrie, which sounded like it had a more subliminal jihad kind of bent to it, which is The Fury.
Yeah, I would say that it did, in that it was, yeah, I mean, this had like sort of a government conspiracy angle that Carrie doesn't have. Carrie is, you know, there's definitely similarities between the two films, and I think that, yeah, I think that De Palma got The Fury because of Carrie. Yeah. Similar concepts, you know, in terms of the telepathy angle. And both about like a telepathic young girl at the, sort of the center of the movie. So
and John Cassavetes as a sinister CIA agent who is like running an institute for like psychic spy soldiers. Right. Basically.
Yeah, both of those though, I think it's interesting that, I mean, he was very negative about The Fury in the 2016 documentary, like, retrospective that he did, which was, you know, a bit surprising. That was actually his mention of Friedkin came at that point where, you know, he was upset about having to do a car chase because basically he didn't have a hand in writing the script at all. So he had to write the script based on sort of I think it was the author of the original novel, The Fury.
Yes.
You know, that
it
wrote
was
the
John
screenplay,
Ferris, yeah.
Yeah, and he was upset, you know, just because he had to, like, film someone else's ideas. You know, he thought he did a good job in, like, certain scenes, but he was very upset about having to do a car chase, because he said, like, you can't do a car chase after the French Connection, you know, there's a subway, there's a car on the bottom, you know, it's the best idea in the world. Yeah. You know.
He really loved it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. At times he does have that kind of, like, boyish Michael Bay enthusiasm just for, like, the complexity of like a huge set piece. He just loves it. He's like a little kid with like his little trains and stuff.
Yeah, but, although it's interesting that his response to that was like not to try to imitate it or to top it, but like that he just hates car chase scenes, which I do understand because I really don't like car chase scenes generally. But
neither.
Yeah, I like that sort of sentiment that like the French Connection just had the ultimate car chase scene, and now like no one should ever do a car chase ever again. Like,
just give up on it. I mean, that's something that I kind of like about him, is that like he's definitely eager to imitate things from classic films that he feels like are like worth kind of like resurrecting. I mean, everything from like the shower scene in Psycho to the carriage bouncing down the stairs in The Untouchables, which is directly lifted from the battleship Potemkin.
There was also something like that in was it in Phantom of the Paradise? I think so. There was like or was it in something else? I feel like he did that twice, where you had like a.
I think it might have been in Blowout.
Oh yeah, no, it was the Fury. It was the Fury.
Oh, okay,
the baby carriage in peril.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did the Battleship Potemkin illusion
and
a couple times. Yeah.
The finale of the Fury, that great scene where just like out of nowhere it cuts to like Kirk Douglas like pointing a revolver at the camera, like lurking in a cab, and then like just like that's where you start to see him really start to like build up to like, I'm gonna do this whole like ultra slow motion thing with like 4 or 5 different characters like doing different stuff, and it's gonna have this like sweeping melodramatic score. And actually this had a John Williams score, which he said was one of his favorite things about it. It is pretty good, but he really became like he starts to embrace like this real melodrama and the kind of sweeping like old Hollywood symphony to kind of go along with it, which I feel like that another like very loud signature of like all of his movies is that kind of like a romantic kind of, I don't know, almost like an Art Deco.
That I thought, actually, now that I think about it, I didn't make this connection before with sort of the sort of revolving camera in Phantom of the Paradise, but it does also have like one of the things that really stood out to me about the Fury is the theme of spinning and revolution. Like literal revolution. In terms of like
the train scene in the beginning with the woman from the like SRI Foundation getting the teenage girl to basically
and the sort of
make
whirly, the tilt-a-whirl type whirligig, amusement park ride that.
Oh my God, that wasn't that didn't I tell you that wasn't that a great sequence?
It's a good sequence, yeah. And then like the final, he kind of does something again in the final scene where he sort of tortures his handler psychically and like spin. He keeps going like spin. Like turn,
he spins her to death. Yeah. And there's also a very kind of toxic relationship with that, where basically like the adult handlers, like there's this woman who's probably like in her mid to late 30s that they've kidnapped Kirk Douglas's son, who is like an ex-CIA agent. They kidnap his son in Israel, and then she starts like seducing him, and he's like, I don't know, like a 16-year-old boy or whatever. She starts like seducing him and like having sex with him in order to kind of like get like more emotional control over his psychic abilities. But then he starts to like, it's a very, I don't know, the way he portrays it, it's like, it's such a toxic relationship that they have that then he gets like really jealous and angry, and then that's when like he sees
they're
like
gonna replace him with like this girl who's kind of his psychic twin. Replace, they really drove him insane. Like at the beginning, he seems like a pretty well-adjusted son of like, admittedly, like Kirk Douglas, who's like a sus, like ex-CIA operative, but they just completely broke his mind. It's quite horrifying.
They kind of drive him insane. There's really kind of like weird, almost like Project Monarch kind of vibes of like they want to like break these people down. And then of course at the end when they like get the girl, John Cassavetes starts to kind of hint that he's going to do the exact same thing with her. He's going to start sleeping with her. And then there comes the finale, which I'll just say that I don't understand why everybody freaks out about Scanners and thinks that it was so groundbreaking having psychic characters blow people's heads up, because De Palma kind of did it first. I don't know what's up with that.
I haven't seen the Scanners in a little while. I'd be curious to rewatch it. I remember, you made this argument very forcefully to me that Scanners was just heavily derivative of the Fury, but I don't know.
In a lot of ways,
I like that part. It was a good, it was a good, exciting ending. It was spectacular when that guy blew up, because he doesn't just his head doesn't just blow up; his whole body blows up.
His whole body blows up. It's bigger than in Scanners. Scanners felt like a Canadian like public access kind of like like knockoff of like this movie, which had like a bigger budget and more more of those like very complex and sophisticated like set pieces in it and stuff. And maybe might have been the first movie where he got the Steadicam, which of course he would become obsessed with for good reason.
Yeah,
Steadicams are
I'd
cool.
be interested to revisit Scanners though, because I don't know.
Yeah.
My memory, at least, of Scanners, it might be colored a bit by like De Palma's own sort of like disinterest in the movie. Although I think that I'd be interested to like learn more about John Ferris, the guy who, had written the book, sort of like a Southern Gothic novelist, I guess.
I would be because
prolific. Yeah.
I mean, this is basically like this is where the psychic stuff is like seeping into popular culture in the late 70s.
Yeah,
this is like Uri Geller
like neither
era.
of those projects, they were both things that were like kind of passed to him. He was offered them. And he was like, yeah, I'll do this. But that is true actually. It's like, here you're the man to do this, and then it's interesting because then he wanted to, I think after this movie, I think he almost wanted to make like a psychic trilogy because he wanted to adapt that novel, The Demolished Man, and I guess he worked for it like a year and a half, 2 years, and I guess it just kind of fell apart and he wasn't able to put it together. But the subject of that kind of goes even deeper. It sounds a little almost like Philip K. Dick, even though it was Alfred Bester who wrote it. But it was basically about like it's a police procedural in the future where telepathy is common, and like in the 24th century, telepaths called espers or peepers. There you go. Peeping Toms are integrated into all levels of society. They're classed according to their abilities. All espers can telepathically communicate amongst themselves, and the more powerful espers can overwhelm their juniors. Telepathic ability is innate and inheritable, but can remain latent and undetected in untrained persons. Once recognized, natural aptitude can be developed through instruction and exercise. There is a guild to improve espers' telepathic skills, to set and enforce ethical conduct guidelines, and to increase the esper population through intermarriage. Some latent telepaths are discovered or where their abilities but refuse to submit to guild rule, and so it's like there's like a murder plot or something that involves like hiring like a PI esper. It actually does sound very similar in plot to the Alfred Bester book that I read and admired a lot when I was much younger, The Star Is My Destination, which is kind of similar but more focused on teleportation instead of telepathy. It's kind of about like a society transformed by the discovery of this like a capability called jaunting. They jaunt, which is like you basically can like move yourself vast distances, and there's all sorts of interesting details. Like I remember that like rich people have come to like ensconce themselves in these vast mazes. So that people can infiltrate with teleportation and sort of steal their wealth and things like and it's similar where the main character is someone who is a kind of in a penal colony or he's stranded. I mean he's definitely like a criminal like on the run. He's stranded on an asteroid for a while, like in this weird kind of society. It's interesting. And he like masters this ability to teleport through space, which like no one else can do. That's an interesting bug. So
I wanted to read like these two lines right here of like the plot summary of The Demolished Man, because there's some key words here that I think everybody will find interesting. I guess the setup of it is that Ben Reich, that's right, Reich, is the paranoid, impetuous owner of Monarch Utilities and Resources, a commercial cartel that the Reich family has possessed for generations. Monarch Utilities and Resources is in danger of bankruptcy because of its chief rival, the de Courtney cartel, headed by the older Cray de Courtney. Reich suffers recurring nightmares in which a man with no face persecutes him. So, I mean, right there, like, Monarch Utilities, the Reich family. This is written in the 50s. So, I mean, before, published the same year MK Ultra started. But, so I don't know, Monarch could just be a totally coincidental thing, but nonetheless, kind of interesting. But he didn't get to make that one. Yeah,
this is kind of a digression, but I did notice that in the Godzilla, the new Godzilla universe of movies, like the organization that is like in charge of like keeping tabs on Godzilla is called Monarch.
Really?
Like, yeah, a bit odd.
Here we go.
You know,
yeah.
I guess it's a good name for like a sort of secret organization, but I don't know. They're rubbing our noses in it, folks.
Yeah, they are. Revelation of the method.
Carburetors, man. That's what life is all about. 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 Yeah, that's what it's all about. I was not myself last night. Lost the fight, my Woody barely running. By a dude I should have beat, and on the street, a blow like that is gunning. I finally lost control. I tore my tuck and roll. Oh, the street where my baby sits up close to me. That's supposed to be what our life is all about. Upholstery where my baby sits up close to me. That's supposed to be what our life is all about. Of all life's mysteries, the greatest one I've seen. My short runs better when it's clean. I was not myself last night. I ran a light without my registration. Where the cops were bound to see, and you know me, already on probation. I wound up on parole. I tore my tuck and roll. Upholstery, where my baby sits up close to me. That's supposed to be what life is all about. Upholstery, where my baby sits up close to me. That's supposed to be what our life is all about. Upholstery, where my baby sits up close.
So the globalists wouldn't let him make The Demolished Man.
No, they wouldn't.
Too much
Yeah,
revelation going on there, and
yeah, I wasn't as like, you know, I'm not as passionate about like De Palma as like an artist like as you are, but I did. My brain started to like, you know, maybe as we get into like Redacted and stuff, like we can talk about this a little bit more, but like I did sort of think, you know, like that. Maybe just like from doing a lot of subliminal jihad, you know, having my sensitivities honed to this type of thing. I did kind of wonder, you know, if he was like set up in some way, like by Mission to Mars, you know, was he set up to fail? Because like, you know, like was Mission to Mars really that much worse than like the stuff that gets like praised and just like, you know, like it's sloppily like, you know, devoured now? You know, was it really
very
that much
good
worse?
question. I wish, like, I think I plan on watching it. I don't think I've actually ever really seen it. I've seen like little parts of it, and I remember it being really panned when it came out. But I think that's a good point.
I don't doubt that
like,
Mission to Mars is bad. I mean, I did see it when I was like in 6th grade. You know, like when it came out and like in theaters. I remember it being pretty bad, like and like stupid. But I remember even as like a 6-year-old, like there was a scene where like some dude was just like living on Mars and like growing like plants, and like somehow he was able to just like walk around like, you know, without any kind of space.
I remember that being a plot. Yeah, because they unlock some
and
ancient alien temple.
Yeah, that happened like, later in the movie, but like even like
yeah.
before even the aliens necessarily came into it, like I remember, I feel like he was like in a greenhouse. I felt like it wasn't like vacuum sealed. I felt like even as like a 12-year-old or whatever, I felt like a little bit like, is this like realistic that he could walk around on Mars, like, you know, just in this greenhouse chilling, like because he has a couple of like potted plants that are making oxygen? Like I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering like how uncannibal it was, but it seemed like a little bit wacky. But anyway,
there's a lot of wacky
that was
stuff
something
in it,
where he was brought on like after the whole script was written, after the old director, like I think it was Gore Verbinski, like left, you know.
Yeah.
But then it was like widely panned, you know. And I looked into a little bit of like retrospectives on it, like that people have done, you know, like 10 years later looking back at Mission to Mars, and now everyone's like, well, you know, it wasn't as bad as everyone said. You know, there are some good sequences. Like I do remember, even like as a kid, I do remember the sequence where there's like all these tornadoes and vortexes that like erupt on Mars and like attack everybody, you know. That was like compelling, and people have pointed to that as being a good part of the movie. And it's just like, you know, is this as bad as Doctor Strange? Like, you know, like, is it really...
For sure. I would trade like the wackiest De Palma misses, you know, I would trade that world for the one we have today where everything is like a middling, like completely uninspired but like competently made spectacle that has no variation to it. Nothing surprises you. I'm sure if I watch Mission to Mars, I'm going to be surprised by a few things, like, you know. And I think there's going to be some kind of wild ideas going on.
You know what?
I think the visuals will be good.
Like, I'm not sure, I guess, but I have a strong feeling that Mission to Mars is better than, like, you know, 99% of, like, Marvel movies. Like, really. You know, like, just in terms of, like, offering something fresh. Like, I mean, Serenity...
Oh, yeah.
You know, like...
Best movie of 2019.
I'd rather watch that than, like, you know, most... So, it's like... Was Mission to Mars really... Yeah, I mean, it was, like, basically, like, based on a Disney ride. It was, like, Pirates of the Caribbean, like, 1.0. So, like, not give it too much credit. But, I don't know. I kind of was thinking, like, was he, like, set up to fail? And then everyone, like, you know, the shark started circling, you know, like, let's get him.
Well, you know, it's interesting
Mars,
that Mission to Mars was written by the brothers who wrote the Predator movie, and we all know from Dr. Stephen Greer that was just propaganda to make ETs threatening. So he just got roped into another propaganda
job. You are one ugly motherfucker. The ultimate line. Yes.
Like a
and you know
beefed
what?
up
Mission
Nazi
to Mars
telling you
is a movie about benevolent aliens that seeded the Earth, and it's terrible, and everyone hates it.
And it discredits the whole idea. Hollywood doesn't. Yeah, people don't want to see that shit. People want to see. Interesting. And maybe that explains why they fought him in all these budgetary things. Like they wouldn't let him spend the money that he wanted to do. That's happened to him a few times. When he gets on a certain kind of topic of a movie, people start really messing with him, and he seems to be pretty cynical overall, like in retrospect of he said that about Mission to Mars, that he had all these like kind of, you know, big set pieces that they forced him to like cut back on, and like really imposed a lot of, I don't know, limitations on what he was trying to do, and so he felt like he couldn't really get a fair shake out of that movie, and, you know, thus it was like this, you know, deliberate failure to sign up everybody. But it's also, I think we'd mentioned this, we were talking the other day about how there was like this weird like spat of Mars movies in like 2000. And I mean that can happen, and that can happen in Hollywood. Like different studios want to have their own Mars project and outcompete it. But
or something
Carpenter,
just in the zeitgeist, and somehow it just naturally like comes about at the same time.
But you know, maybe it complicates it that that John Carpenter had like a pretty panned movie, Ghosts of Mars, that I think came out right around the same time.
Red Planet, everyone hated too.
I saw Red Planet in theaters. I remember being very disappointed by it because it just ends up
you were watching Red Planet, I was watching Mission to Mars. I was in the other theater. You know,
it all was covered. Either way, it was all kind of like bad news for the most part. Going to Mars was like either there were going to be vampire aliens that run out and try to kill you. And like you and Ice Cube have to, you know, blast your way out of it, or there's like weird aliens and stuff, or like the dumbest one, Red Planet, like the robot dog you brought with you turns homicidal and just starts trying to kill everybody. So like they're just fighting this robot dog they brought with them on like a barren landscape.
I never saw Red Planet.
It's really stupid.
I think I got Ghosts of Mars confused with Red Planet at first, because I do remember that one where they're like riding around this stupid like ATV on Mars, like blasting like these alien vampire things.
I think there's another one where they weren't wearing space helmets. It just was like, oh yeah, we solved that. Like there's air.
they did find life on Mars and Red Planet, according to Wikipedia.
They did, but it's not what I don't think it's what.
Yeah, it's
killed
not
them.
like a big ostrich type alien that is like there to.
Unless the life on Mars like killed the robot dog, I forget the ending. I blocked it out of my memory.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know. I guess like he got caught up in that Mars sandstorm of failure in 2000, but really suffered for it more than other people.
One of my favorite anecdotes about that is that, like, as a result of that, and also I guess of the movie Mars Needs Moms that no one saw, like at some point,
weird.
like people just. Disney like had calculated algorithmically that like people hate movies that refer to Mars in the title, which so
when they released John Carter, right?
Yeah, they just called it like obviously John Carter of Mars is a much more exciting title and kind of gives you a sense of like what the movie is about. It's based on those old stories by the Tarzan guy Edgar Rice Burroughs, but they just made it John Carter, which is like I have no idea what this is about, like, and it just sounds awful. It sounds like the worst movie ever. It sounds like Antoine. It sounds like a weird version of Antoine Fisher or something. Like,
it does. Like he became
Fisher.
a basketball coach and taught these kids how to that's what I mean. Coach Carter, the John Carter.
Yeah,
I forget which came out first, but. I don't know who in their marketing department, but I don't know also why they're so obsessed with Mars and just trying to shove this Mars stuff down our throat.
All those, I guess it was the millennium, imagining new futures. But then like there was The Martian, which I guess didn't have any kind of ETs. And,
they're almost more boring now. There's also Mars Attacks, another vicious piece of anti-alien propaganda, which is a genuinely upsetting movie. Yeah, it was like an upsetting Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, I remember the aliens like planting their flag in the president's body or something.
Yikes. But anyways,
yes,
I think
we should possibly do an episode about like Mars. We should just do an episode where we watch Red Planet, Ghosts of Mars, and Mission Mars, and evaluate.
Try to triangulate what was going on.
The psyop,
exactly.
Anyway, so word. That's just my thought. I guess my theory would make a bit more sense if he had made Redacted before Mission to Mars and then was set up to have his career destroyed. But I don't know. Maybe I guess he made Casualties of War before he made Mission to
exactly.
Mars, right?
That's another one that that really does show, I think, a certain consistency with which Redacted is very like kind of similar to, like except it's just like in Iraq and etc. But I mean that is and I guess he acknowledges is like a very depressing movie and is like very dark but like deals with the topic that I don't think anyone else really maybe in Platoon a little bit. There is a scene where they want to rape a girl or something, but like the entire movie of Casualties of War is really like revolves around this kind of like moral struggle and debate where I think Sean Penn and like John C. Reilly and John Leguizamo all want to like rape and murder a Vietnamese girl, and Michael J. Fox is like the one soldier who's trying to stand up to them. And I forget, I mean it was based on like a very specific incident or if it was kind of a pastiche.
I think it was
reflective
based
of
on
reality.
A pretty specific incident. The incident on Hill 192.
Okay.
Font the Mao.
He released that in 1989, and I have seen that before. It's good. It's just, I mean, it's like very melodramatic. It's very dark. I think Michael J. Fox does give like a pretty spirited performance and everything, but a heavy watch. It's it doesn't have like the fun, the pizzazz necessarily of like his other pictures, but I think it does show that he had a commitment to looking at the nasty side of like American American militarism and like American masculinity and all these things. I mean, it's kind of the double-edged sword with De Palma, is that he's kind of like a leering, peeping Tom and like a participant in male gaze, but at the same time is also very fascinated with like male, like toxic male brutality, I guess, for lack of a better word. Or like, like male violence, like interests him in a kind of in a level where I think somebody had said, maybe it was, I don't know if it was Pauline Kael, who was always a defender of De Palma's when he would, get hated on over the years, but that like De Palma still feels like the sinister male is like the other fundamentally in most of his movies, and his camera, even though it's like a male gaze, it is very much like I'm the first male student at Sarah Lawrence, and I'm not like it's like he's like sympathetic with women, but
he's a male gaze. I feel like the whole like the gaze aspect and the male aspect are both very much present.
Very much
that
there.
That movie also, just as an aside, like was written by like another big, and I guess first pitched to De Palma by like another big New York theater person, David Rabe, who wrote like Hurly Burly. So that also kind of
because that was wasn't it a play?
I think it might have been. Yeah, I think that maybe it was like originally a play that De Palma had seen and like wanted to make a movie of.
Because it's very talk heavy. It actually it plays out like a play. It's like a kind of like a 12 Angry Men kind of thing. Of like these dudes kind of in one place like arguing with each other for most of the time.
But David Rabe mysteriously disowned it and dissociated himself from the film.
Doesn't say why.
De Palma had not been faithful to his work.
And
that the film simplified complex relationships.
Well, I mean, I guess. I mean, it definitely has. It has a very negative portrayal of like the perpetrators of it. Which we'll see in Redacted was used against it as a kind of like, why aren't you showing these like rapist murdering U.S. soldiers as like being more nuanced and complicated? And,
also these people can be pretty precious about like their writing, so whatever.
A grain of salt and all that.
So also Ennio Morricone did the music for that and for Mission to Mars. So
he did. He did. Good scores and
director
stuff
set
all
up
around
by the Cabal to take the fall on the ET sword.
And I mean, we didn't really talk about Blowout. I think Blowout is really good. What did you think about? You saw Blowout for the first time.
I thought Blowout was super great. I thought that was amazing. And like very like compelling movie. And the final scene is really good. I actually watched the De Palma documentary before watching it for the first time, and it was like that last scene of kind of gave it away a little bit, but it was that
it's a good scream. It's a good scream.
Yeah.
Oh,
so horrible.
no.
And that's like, that theme that I feel like he returns to where like there's a sort of like commodification or assimilation of like this like, basically just to summarize the entire movie, this like piece of evidence like of like this like a conspiracy to assassinate like a presidential hopeful, like a political figure, ends up just being like incorporated into like this exploitation like slasher movie, like
this dirty slasher movie.
He manages to record, in this obsessive like very De Palma-y protagonist way, like is all about like just replaying the tape and like syncing it up with the video and everything, a video that someone else has captured, and he is trying to put together this case, but all of his efforts just completely fail, and he gets set up, and someone who's trying to protect dies, and and then in the end, like he just has to give up, and like the tape that was supposed to be like the smoking gun ends up just being used as like the scream for this, like that. At the beginning, he's just
like a Psycho ripoff, shower murder, which again is like kind of a almost like digging at himself a little bit for being like, I'm just some filmmaker in this system who is like ripping off Hitchcock tropes, and like it just doesn't matter. Like I'm never, like he has this like thing about like almost. I mean, maybe it's from all the encounter attack therapy theater stuff, but like of like doing struggle sessions like with him, like doing self-crit basically like in his own movies where he constantly like has to like give himself a reality, or his character avatar, he has to give them a reality check that like it's all going to be reincorporated back into like the system, and you can't really escape it.
Like like at the very beginning, like his asshole like producer is just like riding him, like John Travolta's character that is, like about how like he needs a better scream for this like shitty movie, and then in the end like he has no idea like what has gone on. He's so congratulatory. It's like, you found it, the perfect screen. And he like just keeps replaying it, and John Travolta just like
smoking a cigarette.
And like just slowly starts like clutching his head. Like, it's horrible.
Oh, it's really fantastic. Travolta's great in that. Some of the visual flourishes in it, like that spinning camera scene when he's in his audio lab and he's starting to realize that somebody came and pilfered all of his tapes.
That's another thing. The revolution, the spinning, like the spinning of the tape deck of the camera. Yeah, exactly.
Another technical geek kind of character, like with his, like very. It'd be reductive to say it was just like kind of riffing on the conversation, because I think like there's a real obsession of that stuff with De Palma and like building people that know like technical know-how and like especially anything that you could use to spy on people.
That's like very I feel like all the elements that you see come up again like are pretty distilled pretty well in that movie. Like that like has all the salient aspects. I think that's really like the elemental De Palma film that really captures the essence. And the germ of it is brilliant. It was interesting how like there was like sort of like a kind of a program to kill quasi thing where they were sort of framing these like they were doing kind of like a weird like almost Terminator thing where they were killing women who looked like the person they were trying to kill. They like to try to make it look like it was a serial killer, like when they actually killed her, like he has this profile where he kills these women who will have this description, and then when they killed the person they were trying to like assassinate for,
nobody thinks twice about it.
As a cover.
That you're right. That is some program to kill. That's literally, I think, an argument that like Dave McGowan made in Program to Kill as like a hypothesis of like why would you have like an organized group going around doing this? It'd be like to cover up murders that you want to cover up that are important. You mask it with other murders and then can just like create this narrative. Again, it's like the sort of De Palma is like very interested in appearances, like not being what they seem, and like the way narratives like mask realities of stuff, and I think and the fact that he said that this a lot of that movie was inspired by him kind of being interested in the Zapruder film. I think there's a lot of stuff around like the JFK assassination of like mysterious witnesses kind of turning up dead, or like, oh, they had a car crash, or they just had a heart attack one day, or like this person got cancer, things like that you could really like spend, you could spend an endless amount of time like diving into those like rabbit holes. So I feel like, some of those same themes and dynamics were very skillfully worked into Blowout, and it's good. Oh yeah, speaking of political conspiracies, did you get a chance to watch Snake Eyes?
I didn't. I really wanted to, but I couldn't like find it except like on Cinemax or whatever, and like I was like trying to torrent it, but but I watched it, like I wanted to rewatch it, but I watched it like years ago, like kind of half paying attention while I was just like marathon Nicolas Cage movies. But it's not like fresh in my mind. I like vaguely remember it, but
that was one of the ones I watched last year, and definitely an enjoyable ride. I really do wish he had the tsunami ending that he talked about in the
that is great. That's super interesting.
But like, it's another like political conspiracy thriller that takes place during a boxing match in Atlantic City, and Nicolas Cage is like a corrupt an over the top like corrupt cop who's like sitting front row, and then I guess the Secretary of Defense, who's like at the fight, gets sniped and assassinated in the middle of it, and then becomes kind of like this Rashomon thing, but also kind of like JFK thing. There's a conspiracy. I forget exactly. I mean, I remember the conspiracy being kind of like at least like a kind of a Pentagon critical kind of thing. It was all about like some stupid weapon system that we didn't need, but like everyone was going to make a bunch of money off of it, and like the Secretary of Defense didn't want to approve it, so they were going to kill him and replace him with somebody else or something. Like it wasn't. I think. Do you remember? It was something along those lines.
Yeah, not like super well. I'm trying to look now at the plot so that I can remember what exactly the conspiracy was. Yeah, once again, it was a woman in peril. I do remember that very clearly. There was... Oh, you know what? Interestingly, there was, like, sort of a fake, like, Islamic terrorist.
You're right.
Like,
yeah, it was supposed to be... Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
There was.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's a smoke screen.
And that was also in The Fury, kind of, where, like, fake, like, sort of Palestinian terrorists, like, were hired by that dude to...
In the very beginning.
I wonder if that was in the original novel, or if that was, De Palma's place. I guess maybe it wasn't actually in the script. So, but, yeah, because, you know what? I mean, we'll get to this when we talk about Redacted, but one of the things about Redacted that was, like... All right, so, all right, I'll just jump the gun. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can talk about, I guess,
yeah,
no.
We'll talk about when we get to Redacted, but I feel like this, De Palma may have lived this situation. That's my other angle on the De Palma conspiracy theory, that I think you can really kind of substantiate that he sort of
with the thing that happened after Redacted. And that kind of thing. Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because it happened to his friend, Martin Scorsese, too. Remember when that nut shot Reagan and said he did it to impress Jodie Foster because he watched Taxi Driver so many times?
Yeah. Well, but I almost feel like that was, that was a little bit different because I almost think that it's more plausible that John Hinckley Jr. like did that because of that like insane reason that doesn't really make any sense. But I feel like basically, you know, with Redacted, when Taxi Driver came out, no one was like, this is going to make someone kill Jodie Foster because, try to kill the president because he loves Jodie Foster. You know,
no, for sure.
But when Redacted came out, all these pundits were like, this is going to inspire the enemy. Like,
it's a pro-terrorist movie.
The troops, you know, and then this dude, you know, he was basically your standard, like, Salafi guy who, like, you know,
lone wolf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, I almost, and, like, then, like, I feel like his lawyer really pushed the idea, or, like, it came out, like, you know, that, it was all because he saw this clip of Redacted. Like, not really. Like, even if you accept everything at face value, like, you know, leaving aside, like, the whole, like, lone wolf, like, whatever you want to say, like, that angle to it, even if it was just, like, some dude who, like, you know, was radicalized online, as people like genuinely are.
Yes.
I think that like the whole angle of like, it was because of Redacted, like was emphasized
ridiculous.
In a way that was like, you know, excessive.
And instrumentalized to be like,
and also
none,
was like
none of you ever better make
that all these fools had made when it came out. That like, you know, like because you're like telling a dramatized story of something that actually did happen, like, and suggesting that you know, American troops are capable of committing atrocities when we all know, of course, they're not, because like there's no such thing as Abu Ghraib, at all, you know, like, and this heroes. You know, real incident
American
that like this film is,
soldier, an American,
exactly,
all
like
beautiful Chris Kyles. Down to a T.
So and they all literally said, like, I think like Michael Medved or whatever, like went on Bill O'Reilly's show and it's like, is this gonna inspire the enemy, Bill? Of course it is. Like, you know, of course it is. You know,
it's gonna inspire the insurgents.
So it was
they
like
got
that
their wish because
even more.
I believe somebody walked up to, I guess, an Air Force base in Germany and like killed 2 U.S. servicemen, and then they had this thing at the trial where it's like he watched a clip of Redacted and thought it was real, so he had to stop them from raping more girls like immediately and kill them.
It's really interesting because it's like a classic like Islamophobic thing where, like, you know, Redacted is like a found footage type of movie, you know, like it's you know, so it's of like these, you know, American soldiers in Iraq, you know, so. And there's, like, you know, the classic found footage tropes of, like, you know, filming them saying something, like, extremely damning and then just being, like, you know, you're capturing something that really shouldn't be filmed, just be like, turn that camera off, you know, like,
shit off, bro.
How they always do, like, the Blair Witch type stuff, you know, but, like, so, you know, but it's this classic thing. It's actually kind of, like, Islamophobic in a way, because there's always this idea that, like, oh, you know, they can't tell fact from fiction. You know, it goes back to the Middle Ages.
Benghazi.
Really.
Remember Benghazi? Like, the literal excuse for it was like, some guy in like Orange County made like a 10-minute video like making fun of Muhammad, and some people in Benghazi saw it and attacked the U.S. Embassy.
Well, that's slightly different because, like, you know, Muslims do get fired up over like insults to the Prophet. You know, everyone knew that was fake. They were pissed about like the depiction of the Prophet. But this is a little bit different because this is about the idea that this guy saw Redacted and thought it was real, and that's why he did it. And that's something that's like, I remember reading in some book that was actually like a little bit like a sort of an apologetic book, or a more like sort of post-Orientalist like book that was like talking about how like these Spanish prisoners of war performed some kind of like, I think it might have been the Ottomans or Moroccans or in Algeria or whatever. They were prisoners of war in some Muslim country, and like they performed like a play like mocking the Sultan or something, and the guy said like, well, Muslims don't have a tradition of performance, so they probably weren't able to separate fact from fiction, so that's why they were pissed off, so they killed them lots of, and of course this just goes back to the idea that Muslims can't tell what's real and from what's fake because our prophet is fake is like the idea, that's what it really all goes back to, like that, our prophet like pretended to be getting messages from God, like the grodiest stuff of like he trained a bird to perch on his shoulder or whatever, like all these lies about how he was a pseudo prophet. It all go, and then we see, years like millennia later, even or at least centuries, the same thing is instrumentalized to say like, oh, this fool.
They're just so easily deceived.
This is a found footage movie. Yeah, exactly. You can't tell fact from fiction. He believes in Islam. Like, how could he tell that this movie wasn't real when he thinks this is from God?
I feel like that's even been extended beyond kind of Muslims now, and now it can almost be applied to just about anybody. Is that like you could just claim that like they couldn't tell something they saw on the internet from being fiction, and then storm the Capitol. Or something along those lines.
It's something that I think.
Another war on terror paradigm, permeating
there was that
further.
Thing passing around Twitter where it's like, you can either choose to appeal to QAnon people or choose to appeal to people who have college education, which is like the idea that like they don't have like critical thinking training or something like that. I'm sure you saw it, but they don't have the critical they're not educated. That's like, well, that's not the problem. Like that's like,
if only it were that easy.
Like.
You're wearing 5 masks right now, sir.
Yeah, in the case of the like redacted guy, like the alleged redacted shooter, the Frankfurt killing, I guess, in 2011. Arid Uka, German citizen of Albanian descent. Yeah. Right. Yes, the De Palma doomer. In his case, I think that he probably like. I feel like whether or not he thought Redacted was real or not, like, which I feel like, who knows if he did or didn't. I feel like that was something that came out, like, in his defense, which wasn't really much of a defense. But
Brian De Palma made him do it.
He had much more, like, that he was upset about, legitimately upset about, than just that,
Of course. He was also, like, Albanian, but he's a German citizen. Sus vibes, like, down there in the Balkans, with, like, quote-unquote jihadi kind of mercenary asset type people.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. It's very fishy.
He was living in Germany. He was just going on like ISIS websites and listening to those nasheeds, so like stuff. He was like upset, but like it's not like good to murder civilians. Obviously, once again, we reiterate on the podcast.
Of course, yes.
But like the grievances, such as like the actual massacre that Redacted is based on, like that is infuriating, and it does attest to the fact that like. American soldiers and the United States government that like commands these soldiers like doesn't value certain people's lives, and like if you feel that you're a part of that community that's being systematically dehumanized, like you're gonna get pissed off, and like if you have like a religious reading of this that like you're in like eschatological war, like and that there's a reward to get from this, then like something that happens many times. Not good. Like don't commit any terrorist acts. But it's bad. We disavow. But
I think those things can also coexist with like those things can. Yeah, those things
it's
can
not
also
because American filmmakers were critical of the Iraq War.
Of course
like,
not.
That's not the reason why.
Which they were at pains to say they had no intention to translate into Arabic. I think when they
it's not because American filmmakers were critical of the massacres that were committed. It's because of the massacres that were committed. It's like completely
exactly.
Talk about putting the cart before the horse.
I think I want to talk just for a second about like the content of Redacted, which I think I watched yesterday. You didn't get a chance to watch it yet, right?
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I sent you a clip from it to give you a
I saw that
general
clip
idea.
of it. You know, I get the idea of Redacted. Yeah, I saw like that clip of it. And you know, I read up on Redacted out of curiosity, but no, I haven't actually watched it.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I was pretty. It's a different. You know, it's necessarily kind of a departure from the rest of his films because it is shot as a kind of like mockumentary and kind of a pastiche of like different forms of media that are all, you know, kind of like organically like baked into the story. So like the main thrust of it is from basically the camera's being held by a private character, Angel Salazar, who is kind of the De Palma stand-in in this movie. So there's still a lot of the same dynamics at play, but he basically is like filming a war diary of being over in Iraq and is kind of like, you know, just filming random stuff on like a little Sony, like, you know, camcorder. And his whole thing is like he's in Iraq because like he wanted to go to college and he didn't have any money, so he joined the army for that, and he wants to shoot stuff while he's in Iraq because his dream is to use that footage to like apply to USC Film School because like, he wants to make movies. So already you have kind of this young like millennial like film junkie filming the antics of his squadron, and then it also cuts to like different there were a few sequences that weirdly are in French. I don't know if they were like guest directed, but it's like very that are kind of a little bit kind of classic mood setting De Palma, but most of it is like surveillance cameras like on the base, and then this guy's camera footage, and then occasionally like an international news report. But then he even incorporates some things like kind of like proto like YouTube, like things on a computer screen. Like one of the characters' wives has like an army wives blog, and she posts like video blog, you know, updates on it that basically kind of advance the story. And so he like jumps. He even, of course, later in the movie actually recreates like I would say pretty realistically a kind of a Al-Qaeda in Iraq era like beheading video of a U.S. soldier, and really goes like as you would expect with De Palma. He kind of leans into it all the way. And just as a side note, we didn't mention like his dad was an orthopedic surgeon, and I guess like he would go visit his dad growing up as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And he saw a lot of blood all the time, and that's why he says that he's pretty comfortable with like showing a lot of blood and things like that in his movies. So I guess keep that in mind. He doesn't seem to think, or at least he doesn't present it as a kind of a salacious, like I love like gore, just like that. Like he's more like
yes.
But anyways, like the basic setup of this, despite the different like formats and stuff that he's experimenting with, is pretty similar to Casualties of War. However, it is based on an incident that did happen during the Iraq War. I want to say, loosely based on the 2006 Mahmoudiya killings in Mahmoudiya, Iraq, when U.S. Army soldiers raped an Iraqi girl and murdered her along with her family. And so just like a year after that happened, he went and shot this movie in Jordan. Interestingly, it got pretty well received at the Venice Film Festival where it premiered. It got the Silver Lion Best Director Award, premiered at Toronto, New York, Buenos Aires, but then it only had like a very limited 15 theater release in the United States, and got let me check the tomato meter here, 45%.
Oh no, not very good.
Pretty
That's
low
rotten.
for De Palma.
That's certified
it's
rotten.
It's certified rotten.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had bad things to say about it. Now, I personally think like, sure, okay, these actors, I don't know if they're necessarily non-actors. I mean, I don't think they are, but it had that kind of non-actor style, and it really, in a way, it's kind of like De Palma maybe going back to like his theater, his radical theater roots in a way. because he does these very, very long takes where he is kind of embodying a character, you know, whose voice is behind the camera, but is obviously like interacting with the performers in this like faux documentary way. But it's still very based in long takes and stuff. So it's not, even feels bad to call it like a mockumentary. I guess people, you know, you say like a faux documentary or something like that.
Yeah. Well, anything, I guess, that's like a fake documentary is a mockumentary, technically.
Yeah. Though it's not mocking anybody unless you want to, unless according to many reviewers is mocking
it's
our
mocking
brave
the troops.
troops.
Yeah. Right,
Yeah. And I have to say, like, I mean, this is probably, I might put it up. There are only 2 movies that I'm aware of that are anywhere decent towards depicting, like, Western movies about the Iraq War that are kind of any value, and that would be probably like The Battle for Haditha. That's actually a British movie, but that was a surprisingly kind of good one. That was Nick Broomfield who directed that. And then I would say like this one, because they both revolve around like really brutal atrocities. The other movie was about the Haditha killings, but both were basically like completely memory holed or attacked in a very hostile way by like the media press and the regular press. I think Bill O'Reilly went on his own kind of jihad or crusade against Redacted, and I think at one point I read that he called for Mark Cuban, who is one of the executive producers of the movie. He called for a boycott of the Dallas Mavericks because Mark Cuban had financed this sicko pro-terrorist anti-troop movie. And to be fair, I mean, just to be clear, like, it's pretty anti-troop. Right, I mean, just I don't know,
yes,
from the clip I sent you, right? Like they are evil and very evil.
Yeah, they're like complete like racist maniacs, like sociopathic. Like they invoke quite hilariously the rules of engagement to justify like their incredibly like sadistic sociopathic behavior. One of them is like named Rush and is like an obese like Marine, and the other one is like
Reno Flake,
like. Yeah, has like a Confederate flag like flying in his bunk,
and he gives a very like frightening performance. Patrick Carroll, who I don't know, I don't. He's only been in like a couple things. He was in like Constantine, like that Keanu Reeves movie, and I guess was on the 11th Hour. I guess he did a little Boardwalk Empire, and he was in Hail Caesar, I guess, in like a bit part. But like he gives a really scary performance as like an American maniac, basically, and not all the characters. There is a kind of Michael J. Fox character in it who tries to like convince these guys to not. It's also incredibly premeditated. So like in this movie, it's like, and most of it's like kind of caught by this cameraman in the squad, where they kind of calmly discuss how they're going to do this, and it's like it's not an impetuous like our buddy got killed and we're just freaking out and we're going to go do something bad. It's like there's a boiling rage throughout this where basically like repeatedly, just from time to time, like the one by one they're getting picked off by IEDs, and every time they do, like this rage builds in them. But De Palma's good about kind of like not, I don't know, giving like leaning too much into like wouldn't you do the same thing if like you were getting attacked by IEDs? Like I don't know, it feels like a very consistently, he's like very against this war, and he's like not going to give it any kind of like a quarter in terms of like making it seem sympathetic. He just uses it to be like, these guys are already like primed to kill and are like I don't know, like imperialist mad dogs, and the fact that like their squad leader getting like blown up is just going to like escalate their psychopathic urge that they like very consciously want to like sublimate through raping somebody and then like murdering and stuff like that. And the kind of justifications they give for, I think like you said, when the first time they kill a pregnant woman who like they drive through a checkpoint because they don't understand what the hand signals mean, and they get lit up, and it talks about how it's like, what, honestly, like I didn't feel anything, it's like gutting a fish, and like somebody else like rules of engagement, bro, And like, that's right, you know. And it's like, he was just doing his job. But then they almost get in a fight over it, because he's asking him, he's like, dude, you smoked like a pregnant woman, like, you don't feel bad about that? They almost get in, like, you know, like, it's just, I don't know, it's like so much like toxic energy that's just like primed to fucking explode. And their inability to like make sense of the propaganda that they implicitly buy into, and like the fact that there's like the people obviously don't want them there, and they're getting picked off and stuff, but they almost have this like entitled American attitude of like, you know, I think the guy says in like a deposition something along the lines like, man, we do all this shit for them, you know, we fucking took care of Saddam, brought him democracy, protect them from their own fucking insurgents and shit, and, you know, I'm not asking for a medal, but like, you know, maybe just like try to stop killing us, maybe, you know, like, what the fuck, like, what, you know, like, kind of just like whining a little bit, like he doesn't understand, like, he bought into the we're bringing freedom to these Iraqis, but he's also like, he says like sand n-word like every third word out of his mouth, and like, you know, Haji this, Haji that, and like is incredibly racist. And he has the Confederate flag. He gives a very strange monologue at the end about his brother Vegas. His name is Reno, and like he tells this like very noirish, like desert noirish like story about how like his father was like a Teamster leader, and there was like some corrupt Teamster that was ratting to the feds, and so his brother Vegas got hired to like murder his whole family. And it's like a really bizarre kind of chilling monologue. It's not like a extremely long take, but I don't know, the acerbicness and like the black-pilled nature of like these soldiers, he does not hold back on it. And I think it's really interesting that this movie got so much shit for its portrayal of the Iraq War in 2007, and then I think it was just a year later, in 2008 or 2009, that The Hurt Locker like sweeps the Oscars and wins Best Picture, and is like roundly like supported by Hollywood. Is like, wow, this is like such a brave, amazing movie. And I think if you've seen both these movies, it's like not hard to tell, like, well, why was there such a difference in this reaction? I don't think it's because, as a lot of people said, that this is like such a terrible movie that doesn't work and isn't interesting. And one reviewer literally called the movie a war crime.
Yeah, a war crime of a petty degree or something. You know, like a small scale war crime. My favorite reception of it was by Michael Medved, who said, like, this is the most surreal quote about the movie, I think. I mean, not like the most like galling, like not as absurd as calling it a war crime, but he said like, you know, he went on O'Reilly and was like railing against how it was like the worst movie he'd ever seen. And he said something like, Redacted implies that atrocities occur with the tacit or overt support of the American people. If that were true, maybe the scene wouldn't seem so ridiculous. Like, the implication that it's not true is truly, like, you know, a testament to, like, the national derangement that, like, hangs over the United States. Like,
absolutely.
It's, like, really absurd to suggest that, like, you know, the movie's bad because it's not true that atrocities occur with the tacit support of the American people. Like, there are multiple, like, verified instances of that happening related to the Iraq War alone, including the actual massacre this is based on.
And this movie even kind of, like, presages the release of the Collateral Murder video and like the Chelsea Manning thing that would happen like a year or two later, where there's even like a kind of proto-anonymous, like one of the squad members, I don't think it's ever like revealed who, basically like uploads to like YouTube or like Live Leak like a voice modified like if you're seeing this, like I'm being threatened by the Department of Defense, like my squadron like raped and murdered a girl and her family in 2006, and like, you know, basically like his whistleblowing about it, and so it clearly is reflecting real events that were happening in Iraq, like extremely real events, but I guess not, because, you know, people called it clumsy, heavy-handed, sullenly self-congratulatory, utterly surreal, phony picture. It's obscene, a war crime of a petty order. What happens within these formats is too fake to believe. The soldiers don't sound like soldiers. So naive, it's an embarrassment. Those are just a few of the digs that people launched at it. Whatever your sympathy for sports politics. It really is a monstrously bad film on every level, said the Telegraph UK. Like, I mean, come on. It also, I have to say that it like many of De Palma's movies, it like indicts the filmmaker character. And again, like De Palma in a way almost like launches a monologue at himself, where I think as they're going into this raid to do this terrible thing, like the one sort of like good soldier launches into this monologue about like, you think you're better than those people just because you're standing there holding a camera. You're going to run back off to like, you know, to the world and basically sell it to the highest bidder. You're even more disgusting than the media or like, you know, the soldiers or whatever. Like, you think you're better because you're filming this and like you're filming atrocities or whatever. And so there's like, you know, De Palma again is like playing with even the representation of these tragedies. There was a whole thing in the documentary about the girl that portrayed the girl who is, you know, was attacked and killed and everything, and how she was I think they found her in Jordan. I think she was a refugee. I forget if she was an Iraqi refugee particularly, but correct me if I'm wrong. Did he not say that like she got into some trouble when the movie came out, and then he like arranged it to get her a visa to come to America and like paid for her to go to college?
I do not recall that aspect of the documentary.
Maybe. I don't know if I'm like...
yeah.
He definitely said he paid for somebody to go to college, and I feel like it was that girl who was in it, who he said, you know, he really praised her performance and like her like commitment to kind of, you know, portraying a version of like this story. Etc. But you know, people really were pissed off by this. It also ends with like a very controversial montage of like Iraqi war dead, like you know, the bodies of civilians and stuff. I guess there's a fight because De Palma wanted to show their faces, and then the producers, including Mark Cuban, were very concerned that they would get sued by families of, you know, people that would do this, and it would potentially be in like bad taste. So eventually he kind of like MS painted over the faces, but they're all there at the end of the movie, and it's like very it's heavy, you know, much like Casualties of War. The other thing that in relation to what you're saying about like the Islamic terrorist misdirection and Snake Eyes that jumped out at me in this is that basically like, okay, so after this like assault happens and they kill this entire family and stuff, like the cameraman guy had like rigged like a helmet cam to film the whole thing for like his war diary, and ends up like filming the worst parts of all of it. And I believe that after it happens, somehow maybe it gets out that like he has footage of it. And there's one scene where like he goes and like sets up, it's a long shot, he like sets up his camera, you know, on a ledge or something, and like goes and stands out in the street and is kind of like narrating like, here I am like in Samara and blah blah blah, and then like a van just like screeches up behind him, and these dudes in balaclavas like just snatch him and like speed away, and then it cuts to like his body lying in a field with his head like perched on it. And then, you know, later it shows the actual like execution video, very like Daniel Pearl, you know, ISIS style execution video. But it almost made me think like he was like a witness being eliminated, and it's like almost the way that De Palma kind of shows it feels sus. Like I think in the next scene they go to the father, who's the only surviving member of this family that's been massacred, and they ask him like what he's heard about this case, and he says, first, like, they said that a Sunni militia came into my home and did this, but like that doesn't make any sense because like I'm a Sunni, and so then they told me that like the Shia militias came in and did it, but like that doesn't make any sense. And then eventually you know, somebody said, well, you know, did you hear that one of the soldiers had been kidnapped and like beheaded by the I think it was like the Mujahideen Shura Council was like the name of this group. And he said something like, oh, like, I don't believe that. It was kind of calling into question like everything around it. And it almost made me think like there have always been these kind of weird rumblings, especially around the time of like the Surge and like, David Petraeus being in charge of like the U.S. military, like arming different factions of the insurgents and like playing them off of each other and things like that. And then when you think about like Al-Nusra Front in Syria and Libya and ISIS getting all this kinds of support from like the U.S. military and the CIA, again, kind of like the serial killer thing of like, oh, we're gonna take this guy out using like a cover story that everyone's gonna believe, but actually like the U.S. military had to murder him because he was the only person with video of the incident and they were like covering it up. Like, I feel like De Palma is suggesting that in the movie, just the way things are kind of laid out. And it's like how did they know to like snatch this guy like right away? It didn't seem random. It seemed like these guys like roll up specifically to snatch him, and then like the footage gets lost. So or it's either gets lost or it gets like taken into the possession of the rapists. Like they basically just take it for themselves after that and like take his camera and try to hide it and stuff. People also ripped on this movie because they complained that this is maybe one of the more lib complaints that, well, actually, in the actual war crime, the military did prosecute these soldiers and they got life in prison. So yeah, sure, okay, yes, in that incident, the main perpetrators.
Movie end like before, like
it does.
It's like not really part of the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't like, really. I mean, because then it just cuts to kind of like this montage of horrible death and all this stuff, and mentions that like 2,000. It mentions like a pretty high number of civilians have been killed in like the last 24 months, like in Iraq. And it doesn't mention. I think for legal reasons they avoided mentioning. It was Private First Class Stephen Dale Green, who is, I guess, the ringleader of the Mahmoudiyya massacre. He did get life in prison. The prosecutors sought the death penalty, but the jurors failed to agree unanimously, and so he just got life without parole, which outraged the relatives of the family that was massacred. And with Abir's uncle, that's the victim, describing the sentence as, quote, a crime almost worse than the soldier's crime. And then he, I believe, committed suicide in federal jail in 2014. And there's 5 or 6 other guys that are put in jail.
I found Michael Medved's tirade about the movie that I think is worth hearing. This is a transcript from his appearance on O'Reilly. I guess O'Reilly, it was one of his little things.
O'Reilly went off
like
on
the War
it
on
hard.
Christmas. Yeah, that he was obsessed with this movie. Michael Medved came on and said, I'm actually one of the few people in this country who has seen the new movie. It is called Redacted. And let me just tell you, before I go to actually reviewing it, it could be the worst movie I've ever seen. I mean, the out-and-out worst. Most disgusting, most hateful, most incompetent, most revolting, most loathsome, most reprehensible cinematic work I've ever encountered.
Wow.
This is having reviewing movies for more than 25 years. Covers a lot of disgusting ground, but none more disgusting than Redacted, which portrays the Marine Corps, one of the finest organizations ever assembled by human beings.
What?
Portrays the U.S. Marine Corps as corrupt, vicious, racist killers and rapists.
Oh
correct.
My God.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Also, like one of the finest. I feel like even O'Reilly. Like, what about I don't know, the Sisters of Quiet Mercy or something? One of the finest. Even if you love the Marines, I feel like anyway.
Come on. I feel like even the Marines would be a little uncomfortable with that description of them. As they kind of like being bad. A little bit.
Anyway, it portrays the members of our Marine Corps in the most disgusting way imaginable. They hang out in barracks, drunk or stoned, with Confederate flags all over the place. Wow, this is really a time warp because they're saying the Confederate flag is bad. Kind of implied that the Marines are so good, so they wouldn't fly the Confederate flag.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Exactly. They wouldn't dare.
Yeah.
They wouldn't dare.
And the head Marine, who is the leading rapist and murderer, is a big fat guy. I mean, hugely out of shape, right? Just a typical Marine. Marines tend not to look like that. Big fat guy, overhanging belly, cigar chomping, loud mouth, sort of fair complexion. His name is Rush. Nothing in movies is an accident. They are clearly trying to indict and smear Rush Limbaugh by saying that he secretly wants to rape and abuse 14-year-old girls and murder them and then burn their bodies.
Okay, that's an odd. Given that didn't Rush all get like arrested? Wasn't he a big like love to go to the Dominican Republic with a duffel bag full of like
I think it's actually
kind of person?
To say that Rush Limbaugh secretly wants to do that is kind of like a kindness, but
almost like doth protest a little too much there. Like what is he?
Yeah.
Secretly nervous that's what Rush does.
The play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. But anyway, the film is atrociously acted. It's incredibly badly done. Look, I never say this. I don't believe in boycotts. I don't. I wonder how he feels about BDS, but I actually think Bill O'Reilly, I know, has been going on about this movie even though he hasn't seen it. Okay, I've now seen it. Bill, hey, it's worse than you think. This film is an atrocity. It is 0 stars as far as I'm concerned. It's very much rated R. I honestly was close to vomiting when I saw the film. I have seen a lot of unspeakable garbage in years and years of reviewing movies. Nothing quite like this. It is a slander on the United States of America. It is a slander on the Marine Corps. It is a slander on our troops. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, paid for this entirely. Now he elsewhere has given money to support the troops. I know he has. He ought to be ashamed. Everyone associated with this film ought to be ashamed. I will never see a Brian De Palma film in the same way again. This is a veteran Hollywood director. What is he trying to do with this thing? And this is a key part. Will it inspire future terrorists? Of course it will, because it portrays the United States troops in Iraq as sick, murderous, deviant losers. Again, true.
Wow. That is...
Yeah, so it was like a fait accompli that, this is going to inspire future terrorists. And lo and behold...
it's exactly what it did 4 or 5 years later. And, it got blown up into this huge thing. And
if he hadn't seen that clip of Redacted, nothing would have happened.
This never would have happened. Yeah.
That was the main thing. That was the main thing that happened on that guy's road to radicalization, for sure. If Brian De Palma had never made Redacted... it would have had a huge impact.
I mean, look, having watched it, that scene is very effectively disturbing. I pretty much had to turn the volume down almost all the way at a certain point because it was too fucked up. It really doesn't hold back from and there's not even much of a. It's there's nothing standing in the way. There's no good person in the scene. It's all bad. And stuff like that, and it cuts away before it goes even worse. But it definitely is a thing that gets you kind of pissed off at fuck these people, fuck these U.S. troops, this is so wrong, etc. But it's still couched within a movie that's obviously. I mean, I guess the prosecutor or the defense lawyer claimed that he just saw a disembodied clip of that helmet cam scene of the rape, and that's it.
I'm sure it's a shocking film, but this is based on something that actually did happen.
So it's kind of irrelevant.
Description
it's
of
irrelevant.
The Mahmoudiya massacre. It's really an artistic rendition of So on March 12, 2006, soldiers of the checkpoint from the 502nd Infantry Regiment, consisting of Green, Paul E. Cortez, Specialist James Barker, Private First Class Jesse V. Spielman, and Private First Class Brian L. Howard, have been playing cards, illegally drinking alcohol, whiskey mixed with energy drink, hitting golf balls, and discussing plans to rape a beer and, quote, kill some Iraqis. Green was very persistent about killing some Iraqis and kept bringing up the idea. At some point, the group decided to go to Abir's home after they had seen her passing by their checkpoint earlier. The 4 soldiers of the 6-man unit responsible for the checkpoint, Barker, Cortez, Green, and Spielman, then left their post for Abir's home. 2 men, Howard and another soldier, this is a 14-year-old girl, by the way, remained at the post. Howard had not been involved in discussions to rape and murder the family. He heard the 4 men talking about it and saw them leave, but thought they were joking and were planning to beat up some Iraqi men to blow off some steam. The 6 soldiers at the checkpoint had no involvement. On the day of the massacre, Abir's father, Qasim, was enjoying time with his family while his sons were at school. In broad daylight, the 5 U.S. soldiers walked to the house, not wearing the uniforms, but wearing army-issue long underwear to look like, quote, ninjas, and separated 14-year-old Abir and her family into different rooms. Spielman was responsible for grabbing Abir's 6-year-old sister, who was outside the house with her father, and bringing her inside the house. Green then broke Abir's mother's arms, and murdered her parents and younger sister, a 6-year-old girl, while 2 other soldiers, Cortez and Barker, raped Abir. Barker wrote that Cortez pushed Abir to the floor, lifted her dress, and tore off her underwear while she struggled. Yeah, so I think you get the idea.
So, with the exception of dressing up like ninjas to look like they were maybe insurgents, everything in Redacted is pretty much a reflection of like what happened there.
If not like a sort of better than what actually
slightly
happened.
Less awful than what actually happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's awful enough to give you the impression, but like it was even worse than that in reality. So the idea that this is somehow out of bounds, that this is like wrong to and like insulting to the historical reality in some way is insane.
Yes.
Obviously.
Our soldiers aren't lose. Green, who later said the crime was awesome, then raped Abir and shot her in the head several times.
Jesus.
Great.
And you know, that's
they
the
let
thing.
them
Like,
celebrate their crimes with a meal of chicken wings.
Literally,
not losers, not deviants. This is a slander on our troops.
Yeah, these brave men. They're just like the Hurt Locker guy, like running into harm's way.
And then they lied and tried to cover it up and tried to blame it on insurgents, just like in the movie.
Yeah, so like the movie, and even I get it, and I think there's like this weird. There is a certain problem. It's maybe related to anti-hero fatigue in movies and television these days, where there's like a confusion. I forget if we mentioned this before, but like the confusion between the representation of something and the endorsement of something, and like how those two things, like I think. Maybe that sensibility wasn't fully like activated.
We mentioned how like representing something is bad unless it's Baphomet. Like then, like you know, it's okay.
Yeah, or let's just like you necessarily endorse that these characters are like. I mean,
this movie obviously
evil.
isn't like they understood that it wasn't an endorsement. Yeah, yes. Like I get that.
They know.
I mean, I understand. Like I get it. Like if this is something that would be traumatic, like for people who have gone through something like this before, like you know, or have experiences in their lives that like are brought up by like you know hearing or seeing this type of thing. Like that's fine, and like you know, people should be aware of that before they see these type of movies. But
of course,
like as like political agitprop, it's 100% acceptable to like make a movie like about like a real event that is critical of like the U.S. military for something that actually happened.
Yeah.
Like
well, exactly. He's not pulling this story out of complete thin air, even though to some extent he would have the right to do that in general. But the fact that it's completely, and I guess my point about like the representation thing is that people are almost like mad that he's actually representing it realistically. And it's like, but like, why? You know, like it's like they want him to throw them a little cookie and like make some of these guys like more sympathetic, for lack of a better term. Because what else could they want from this movie?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Like, what do you want out of the portrayal of these monsters? Like,
they
want to make them more
like
human?
they want a Hurt Locker guy, you know, who's like they want the good guy, you know.
And there is one character, so you have to give him enough credit, and I guess that was realistic. Where eventually, I think one of their squad mates like ratted on all of them and got them like arrested. But there's like a really, I told you a little bit. There's a great scene with that guy, the Michael J. Fox, at the end where he's like at a bar celebrating his return with his wife and his friends, and they're all drunk, and his friend is filming him on his camera and is like, you know, hey man, like tell us a war story, man. And he's like, no. Like, oh, come on, tell us, you kill anybody over there? And then, you know, he goes into like starts talking about it, and increasingly it gets darker and darker, and then like he starts to bring up, you know, basically that there are like people in my squadron, and then his wife like comes back from the bathroom and he's like already crying, and she's like looking around like all one take, and like she realizes like he's recounting some horrible fucking war thing, and he mentions the whole incident and says, you know, and I just stood there and I didn't do anything about it, and like I'm gonna be haunted with that for the rest of my fucking life. And then, you know, his wife hugs him and stuff, and the, you know, it's very awkward, and then the friend is like to the bar, like, hey everybody, like, hey, we got a veteran over here, everybody, let's give him a hand and show him our support. And then the whole crowd just like goes, yay, like, yeah, like, we support our troops, like, we love you, you're a hero. And he's like sitting there like crying like a completely like broken shell of a person, and everyone's just like raising their drinks to him and like, yay. You will not see that in any other fucking Iraq war movie. Mm-hmm. Like that was, you know, and I think that he does give a little bone of like, well, this one guy is like not a psycho like these other guys, but like he's power. Again, the De Palma theme, like one man is like powerless to basically stop a whole, you know, system of sickos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just reading more about this incident. Again, something that is worse than the real, like, you know, worse than the movie is that, you know, like, the guy who learned of it, for one, there wasn't like someone in the group who tried to kind of stand up to them. It was, you know, Surgeon Anthony Uribe learned of the massacre and told Private First Class Justin Watt, a newly assigned soldier to Bravo Company, that Green was a murderer. Watt conducted a personal inquiry about this alarming act by a fellow soldier and co-worker. He talked to other members of his platoon who revealed to him that the gang rape and murder had in fact occurred. Watt then reported what he believed to be true to another non-commissioned officer in his platoon, Sergeant John Diem. Watt trusted Diem. He told him that he knew a terrible crime had been committed and asked for his advice, knowing that if he reported a crime, he would be considered a traitor to his unit and could possibly be killed by them. Diem told him to be cautious, but that he had a duty as an honorable soldier to report the crimes to the proper authorities. Unfortunately, they did not trust their chain of command to protect them if they reported the war crime. Wow. As a result, like, he basically had to go to a therapist, like, and disclose it in a mental health counseling session in order to circumvent the chain of command, because like they both felt that like they were honor bound to tell the truth, but that they couldn't actually report like through the proper, like, you know, the quote unquote proper channels, because they felt like they would just cover it up.
So the system is basically monstrous in general, and even that, like, that is the tail end of the movie, where the one sort of good soldier who, I guess that's a flourish of De Palma's, like, kind of putting him in there. He basically gets a gun stuck in his face and is like, go out there and fucking keep watch, and like he just sort of, you know, wimps out and like goes outside. And, like, you know, that's it. But then later, you know, tries to do it. But it shows, like, basically when, like, the JAG officers are coming in to, like, have this guy finally tell his story, they're just, like, completely naysaying all of it and, like, basically to, like, just almost, like, scoffing at him. Of, like, very Troy Bonner, like, it's not going to be believed. It will not be believed. You know, like that kind of energy of, like, they're basically, like, have a threatening posture towards him. And so, again, like, that's all real. So then, like, why is everybody hating? But then, you know, William Friedkin can make rules of engagement and, like, waste the motherfuckers. And, like, it's just kind of like, okay.
Well, because,
no big
like,
deal.
well, probably that little girl who's, like, 6-year-old sister's arms, they, like, broke, or I guess, you know, who they murdered while she's being raped in the other room, she probably would have, like, pointed a gun at a bunch of brave Marines if she had a chance. Like, all
could you
children,
blame her if she had survived that? Could you blame her at all?
Fact,
like,
it really, like, you know, if you want to understand, like, why there's such a thing as ISIS, like, you know, the people who discovered that, like, you know, the Shura Council, like, they're now I think incorporated into ISIS, or were at one time.
They
like,
were a part of ISIS.
Those are the exact people who, like, you know, the people who witness these types of things, like, they, you know, would have, like, if you want to know, like, why people would join ISIS, like, because of that.
That I think brings us maybe to the last movie we'll mention, which, like, has to be limited because neither of us have watched it yet. I think it's on Netflix, but that ties into that, what you just said, which is his most recent film from 2019 called Domino. Like, no, not the Keira Knightley movie. This is with Nikolai Coster-Waldau and Guy Pearce. But get a load of... I mean, I'd like to, you know, circle back at some point and, like, watch this movie and try to... It apparently was kind of like a disappointment. He really got relegated to, like, going and shooting a kind of, like, mid-budget movie.
Yeah, well, because he doesn't do anything in Hollywood anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, ever since Mission to Mars, Redacted was.
Well, no, he was... you're right. He was able to... all the movies I think he made after Mission to Mars were outside of Hollywood. So Femme Fatale, Redacted,
even the Black Dahlia, despite
the Black Dahlia, which I have to say, like I watched that a recent while ago. Given
I watched that years ago. I almost went back and rewatched it. Yeah, I remember it being really shitty. But,
it's not good. That was a whiff from BDP, but you know it's gonna happen. But he didn't have the institutional. He had to shoot it in like Romania or something, or like Bulgaria or something like that. Like it's an LA noir. Like made no sense. But anyways, like he really
get when you make a bad movie out of Disney ride, you just have to go. Just take your things and go, sir.
I guess so. So he's only made 2 movies since Redacted. He made Passion, which is kind of a more classic erotic thriller with Rachel McAdams and Noomi Rapace. But like I haven't watched it yet. It might be interesting. But then in 2019 he made Domino. So let me just read the interesting kind of summary of this. It's a crime thriller. Let's see. It tells the story of a Danish police officer who is seeking justice for the murder of his partner by a vengeful man hampered by the fact that his target is a CIA informant. And that basically what it is, it's all about ISIS. So I guess there's a murder. This cop's like partner is murdered, kind of very classic, when they're raiding like a house in Copenhagen filled with plastic explosives and like a dead man. And this assailant like I guess kills his partner. So the police identify the assailant from fingerprints as Ezra Tarzi, a Libyan emigrant and former special forces operative whose parents had been killed by the Salah al-Din, an ISIS commander known as Sheikh. Al-Din, who smuggles weapons and explosives through a tomato importer based in Brussels, is responsible for numerous terrorist attacks, which he films and edits before posting them online. Wow, so he's dialed into like the ISIS video aesthetic. Tarzi's victim, Farouk Harez, was one of Al-Din's lieutenants, and Tarzi was trying to get to him. Toft wants to pursue Tarzi to bring him to justice, but is suspended by his superior, Detective Vold, after he learns that Toft misplaced his service weapon and is interrogated by Internal Affairs Inspector Alex Bowe. Meanwhile, Tarzi and his family have been abducted by CIA agent Joe Martin, who has relentlessly pursued Al-Din ever since he killed 5 of his colleagues years earlier. Martin pressures a reluctant Tarzi into working on his behalf by threatening to reveal his murderous deeds to his children. And then basically, so generally, okay, the plot is like about an ISIS guy who's like a CIA informant and is being like protected by an evil CIA agent as like a Danish cop tries to catch him and like get revenge. And so I mean, you could see very classic kind of De Palma dynamics, but I thought that was interesting that after his movie, according to some, inspired a real life terrorist attack in Germany in 2011, that he would go back for like one of his next movies to Europe to make this whole paranoid thriller about like CIA protected ISIS people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's I guess he was not satisfied with it though and had a bad experience in Denmark.
He did. Very bad.
Many production issues, I guess. I guess it's one of those things, kind of like The Fury, where he said like he wasn't involved in ADR.
Yep.
And
the music sessions.
I didn't write the script. He says. He never experienced such a horrible movie set. Wow. Yes,
a large part of our team has not even been paid yet by the Danish producers. This was my first experience in Denmark and most likely my last. So, big L there, Denmark. What? Maybe that was another trap. Get
maybe.
Laura De Palma.
I don't trust those Danes to make a sympathetic movie about Muslims. We all know what they do with their cartoons. So
You're right. You got to watch out for that. And all this European money, I guess Canal Plus and Cine Plus, other people, and also distributed by Saban Films, owned by Power Rangers impresario Haim Saban, major funder of the Clinton Foundation. So interesting that that's where his head is at as of 2019.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I do like the idea that like there's a like conspiracy to have like bad movies made about like, you know, whatever the powers that be want to shitcoat, you know, they like just have like, you know, like like kindly ETs as opposed to evil predator aliens, and or CIA handling ISIS you know, operatives.
Right. I mean, maybe somebody like De Palma, he's too much of a, like, you have to kind of trap him, like many of his characters get trapped into, like, you know, signing on to some project that he thinks is going to be his cantata, his Faust cantata.
Yeah. I mean, even seriously, though, like, I wouldn't really be surprised if, like, I mean, I'm sure that, like, anyone who makes any, because, like, they do stuff where, like, they want to be, like, involved in any movie that, like, you know, depicts anything, like, that has to do with the DOD or the CIA, you know, like, they want to be involved. And, like, not only...
And if they can't be involved... And they're afraid that this movie is going to, like, you know, portray a kind of a type of narrative that they don't want to get out there. Is there a way that they can still, like, get in on it at a higher level?
And I'm sure they are, like, attentive
it?
to people. Yeah, I'm sure they are attentive to people who, like, have a sort of history or a certain, like, high profile, like, who have a history of, like, you know, creating material that's viewed as deleterious. Like, you know, I'm sure that, like, it's not like people in the CIA, like, are above, like, having, like, bad, like, lame opinions about movies or getting, like, triggered by the fact that something insulted the troops. You know, like, you know, I'm
they're
sure
not
that,
immune
like,
to that.
There are definitely people in the intelligence community who would be like, oh, you know, like, this movie was critical of the troops, like, this is, like, incredibly harmful and disgusting, and, like, it's a national security threat. You know, so
I'm not a supporter of censorship, but you know, that whole thing.
I don't support boycotts, but yeah, exactly.
In this case, it's just too important to let go.
Too important. Yeah.
Yeah, and no, that would make sense, and especially somebody who's coming in off the heels of this, like, last movie, which really seemed to, like, kind of fuck his career up, that he made about, like, U.S. war crimes in Iraq, and now he wants to do, like, a sus paranoid thriller about ISIS, people being, like, puppeteered by the CIA and all that stuff. It's like, I don't know, like, maybe that would be on somebody's radar at the, you know, I wonder if the CIA, like, Hollywood Liaison Office also, like, scans the landscape of, like, the European film markets and, like, the different indie markets and the film festivals, things like that, and they try to, like, identify, like, wait a minute, like, let's offer this guy, like, a Marvel franchise that requires, like, Air Force involvement, or, like, let's start freezing him out. Like, you know,
I mean, I'm not all in on this, like, you know, theory that Brian De Palma's career was, like, sabotaged, like, because of casualties of war. I mean, I guess the movie he made after that was Bonfire of the Vanities. And they gave him Tom Hanks. He was too nice, you know.
But then you know, Mission Impossible, you know, also, he almost, like, got back in their good graces for a minute by making a kind of, like, CIA-ish spy thriller. Though I think even the plot of that has a lot of, like, double-crossing evil.
I think the bad guy ended up being, like, the head of the... Am I wrong? Wasn't, like, the head of the Impossible Missions?
The IMF, actually, like... the IMF, which is another weird, like, synchronicity there.
The Impossible Missions.
It was like John Voight, right?
Name. Maybe, yeah, it was. And he was originally, like, in charge of the Impossible Missions Force. But then he turned out to be a bad guy, so it was kind of like a Trevelyan, like, 006 type thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly, Trevelyan, for sure. And, so I think, like, I mean, that movie definitely had, I mean, I remember, like, liking it when I was, like, I don't know, 11 or 10 or 11, whenever it came out. Like, it was a real banger back in the mid-90s. I don't know if you ever saw it, like, in theaters, but I think I even had, like, the soundtrack on, like, cassette tape.
You know, I'm not saying, like, you know, I'm kind of, you know, just spitballing with this theory, but there's a kernel of truth to it, is my point. You know, like, there's a kernel of truth to these speculations.
He was too dangerous. He had to be neutralized with Mission to Mars, and then after that, freeze him out with film financing. Like, why? You know what?
Red planet in a bucket. He was sent to hell in a bucket.
Yeah, he was going to the red planet in a bucket. He was going to Mars in a bucket. And I guess he was enjoying the ride because he got to film a lot.
Yeah, I honestly could see
women.
like it being part of Mission to Mars that like, you know, the astronauts like crank up Hell in a Bucket like in the cockpit of the rocket. And, like,
that would have been a 90s. It was just like that one, I think it was Mercury Rising, that was like had a sort of like space like rocket element in it, and Bruce Willis is in it, and I remember this from when I was a kid, like, very vividly talking about like how on like a recent like space shuttle launch that like they had included like the urn with the ashes of Jerry Garcia in it, and like Bruce Willis's character was a deadhead, and he like cared about it very much, and like that was like a thing that jumped out. I was like, why is like this dad character like so obsessed with like Jerry Garcia? Like, I don't get it. But like that was the, you know, they're dropping some hints. I don't know, you know, this like that Uncle Sam skeleton like flying around in a UFO like going right, just like horrifyingly.
The face on Mars,
the face on Mars, etc. But yeah, I mean, I think we probably wrap up there. De Palma, I don't know how dangerous he was to the game, but I feel like he holds up better than a lot of other people, and I feel like he's understand. We need to understand that De Palma is understand.
Yes, he's insufficiently stand. I see. Yeah, okay.
Insufficiently
it took me a
stand.
second to like gloss that,
me too.
but I got it. Yeah. Right.
Definitely. I don't know. Like a lot of movies worth checking out. I'm not done with it yet, but I am curious.
Yeah,
I think
I'm kind of intrigued to revisit Mission to Mars. At some point. For sure, yeah. Phantom of the Paradise, I definitely recommend and endorse.
Highly recommend that. Blowout,
probably my highest recommendation of what I've seen of his. Even more so than like a movie like Carrie. I would definitely.
Carrie never grabbed me as like, oh yeah, this is like the best thing ever. Like it was like scary and intense and like cool and stylish. But
I guess I understand why people liked Carrie, and like the that is a great jump scare at the end. Like that did get me pretty bad when I first watched Carrie.
Oh yeah.
Jump scares really do get me, especially jump scares like that, which now it really has become like kind of an archetype almost. Or a trope, like the sort of hand from
of course
from the grave, but
I guess Body Double, kind of interesting in that.
Body Double, I didn't see that either, but I definitely am intrigued by that, especially the vampire theme is interesting.
Yeah, there's a big vampire thing going on in it, and the kind of like a doppelganger, like mistaken identity and like losing your identity. If you kind of being a desperate actor in Los Angeles, the protagonist like looks a lot like young Bill Maher, but slightly more likable. But it's like it's funny to watch it, kind of imagining, because the author's also the main character is kind of like a peeping Tom, like stalker as well. So it's kind of like, oh, this is how Bill Maher got started, like in Hollywood. When you're watching it, it's just it's one of those weird kind of things. But that does a lot with like kind of like the 80s porn industry, and very Rear Window influenced, and has a very meta ending, and also very concerned with like theatricality, and that's the one with those kind of sketchy acting classes that were like attack therapy basically. And so I would recommend that one as well. Dressed to Kill, we didn't talk about Dressed to Kill. Very problematic RE trans issues, which I laughed out loud when he said the documentary like it was directly inspired by William Friedkin's Cruising, because I feel like it's gotten like ripped on in the exact same way, and it came out in this like practically the same year. But then he said at one point, like, I had the story for a while, but then the transsexual thing, holy mackerel, that just sealed it. It was perfect after that. Like he just thought it was great. He does have a very interesting fixation with like cross-dressing and kind of like and camp and trans kind of issues that, I mean, definitely doesn't age super well, because like Michael Caine is like dealing with like kind of his like sexual identity, and then becomes like a bloodthirsty murderer.
Yeah, it's basically
it's a
like
very
the
limited
ultimate
understanding of like.
Yeah, it would not be well received because that's like the ultimate offensive concept that like it's just because.
His urge to not when he sees an attractive woman he's really attracted to, it like makes him have an erection, which then reminds him that he has a penis, which he doesn't want, and so then to like basically stop that process, he has to murder the person. Definitely would catch a few.
I would definitely recommend that movie to any like rad femmes on Twitter.
Any TERFs out there.
If you're a mom from the UK, I would definitely recommend Dress to Kill. You'll love it. If you're definitely like the number one TERF movie, pretty much. Like
Raising Cain is very similar, but it's actually more about like multiple personality disorder, like DID, which John Lithgow's character has, which also probably would upset people in like a trans context, because like he cross-dresses as like a function of his like MPD and then like murders people. He was really interested in that kind of thing, but what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Just lay low.
Stay paranoid. Like, be a voyeur. Sign your soul to the devil. No, like, don't do any of that.
Record everything.
Don't look through the telescope at the beautiful woman dancing naked in like the luxury condo across the canyon from you. It's all a psyop. You're being framed for murder. It's there's just I think I'm gonna keep on this thread, and if any of the other remaining films are like sufficiently interesting, maybe we'll circle back to
I'm sure it'll come up again. I mean, the 2000s Mars movie marathon is on the docket for sure.
I feel like there's a lot of symbolism and spooky esoteric stuff in Mission to Mars.
In general is like an interesting topic. I mean, obviously, it's a planet, probably like the planet that looms largest, like in the imagination of humanity in general. So I guess Venus is also up there, but
I'm kind of partial to Venus. Ever since I learned that hypothetically you could live in cloud cities, like several miles above the surface, and it would be 75 degrees.
I'm a bit sussed out by Venus, because Venus is Lucifer. Venus is the morning star. So
I think the whole covered in acid and it crushes you and is like 800 degrees is very scary. But I want to know what happened. What kind of Fatonian tragedy befell them?
I did find it amusing a little while ago when there was that story about possible life on Venus, which was obviously like a Luciferian blue beam psyop, but like one of the people the Venus researchers talking about it was like kind of remarking about how like upset the Mars people would be if they found life on Venus first, because you know
what? Okay, talk about a psyop. Like, maybe I'm partial to Venus because the only planet that's ever been landed on by like a probe that sent back video footage was the Soviet Vega probe that landed in the early 70s on the Venetian surface and managed to take pictures.
Really? They landed a probe on the Venetian surface?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they were not slacking off. Yeah, and they transmitted video for like several minutes before the heat and the pressure like completely like crushed it. But if you look up, we have pictures from the surface of Venus from the Soviet probe.
That's amazing. I didn't actually think that it would be possible. Like,
I'm sorry, it was the Venera probe.
Wow. These pictures are quite breathtaking.
1970. Or I guess 75.
A brief but impactful visit to Venus. Wow. Yeah, they did a lot. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Because I thought that I guess the reasons why it was a brief visit are the reasons why I thought it would be pretty difficult to pull off. But they did get pictures, which is really
heroic. Comrade Venera probe sacrificed themselves. To
talk
get
about infiltrating. The satanic
Lucifer's.
Temple. They went to the planet. Yeah, the citadel. Of
right.
The
I'm looking at these rocks right now. They're just like regular looking rocks. It's so surreal.
Yeah.
Spooky. I wonder why couldn't he get a better horizon shot? I don't know. I'm not going to be picky. It's still impressive. Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So
check out some De Palma. You mostly can't go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would definitely endorse Blowout. The Fear is pretty good of the movies that I watched recently.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But I would definitely endorse Blowout and Phantom of the Paradise. Particularly the latter, or the former. That is the Blowout.
Mm-hmm. So. Until next time.
Yeah, surveil everything.
Surveil everything.
Watch out for autogynephilia.
Watch out for plots around every corner. You can't trust anybody. The powerful are all erotic freaks who are out to get you and subvert your artistic spirit. And don't sign the Faustian contract with blood.
And
don't do it.
Don't wrongly depict our amazing Marines as being fat or losers.
Don't you dare.
Watch
don't
out.
worry. It'll never happen again.
You'll be sent to Mars in a bucket.
So,
right.
Stay away from going to Mars in a bucket. And until next time, stay vigilant.
Peace.
I was not myself last night, couldn't set things right with apologies or flowers. Out of place as a crying clown who could only frown, and the play went on for hours. And as I lived my role, I swore I'd sell my soul for one love. Stand by me, and give me back the gift of laughter. Yeah, one love who would stand by me, and after making love we dream of bitter style. We dream a bunch of friends, dream each other's smiles, and dream it never ends. I was not myself last night. In the morning light I could see a change was showing. Like a child who was always poor, reaching out for more, I could feel the hunger growing. And as I lost control, I swore I'd sell my soul for one love who would sing my song, and fill this emptiness inside me. One love who would sing my song, and lay beside me while we dream of bitter style. Dream a bunch of friends, dream each other's smile, dream it never ends. All my dreams are lost, and I can't sleep. And sleep alone could ease my mind. All my tears have dried, and I can't weep. Old emotions made their rest in peace, and dream a bunch of friends, rest in peace, and dream it never ends. as I live my role. I swear I'd sell my soul for one love who would sing my song.